Welcome to A Horror in Detail. Are you ready to embark on a chilling journey into the realms of darkness? The mysterious and the bone-chilling world of horror stories. On this channel, we are dedicated to unraveling the most terrifying tales that will send shivers down your spine. First story. This story was shared by you/I the Meta. I'm still mentally recovering from this encounter. A little background before I unravel this horror story that is unfortunately true. First, I am a police officer for the city I live in. I am including this detail because it plays a small part later in the story. Second, this happened last month, July 2016, so I am pretty sure I will remember the details pretty accurately, not to mention that I practice depicting details of incidents every day multiple times on paper 5 days a week. Anyway, I like to go fishing. Either for bluegill or catfish for the most part. I like these two particular types of fish because they will feed at almost any time in the day, whether it's late or early in a 24-hour period. I tend to go late at night only because my sleeping schedule is set that way due to the hours I am on duty. And on my days off I have to do all of my running around and errands in the daytime. The spot I usually fish is about 12 miles out of the city and is a pretty little drive past some fields and 1 or 2 houses. After that it's just a road and trees all along the side, stretched over it kind of like a tunnel. About 6 miles down the road you have to take a sharp right. On the corner there was a man walking along the road. 6 feet 0 inches, dark hair, black shirt, tan pants. Looked like a straight guy, no tears or dirty marks on his pants. I didn't stop because I figured he was a field irrigator or he had something to do with working out there. They do all kinds of irrigation for fields at night. 20 minutes pass and I am already on the fishing dock in my chair listening to the cutting silence. No wind, no anything. I prefer it that way anyway, mostly because I have become a little paranoid being out at night all the time. You see some crazy stuff in the city at night when you are a police officer. It's very silent, the kind where you can hear the humming sound of the silence if you know what I mean. But then there was a crack as if someone was walking up. I turned around and flicked on my headlamp. I was clam at this point. I figured it might be a rabbit or maybe a small owl. To my surprise, it was the guy I had seen earlier. He seemed blank. He just looked at me and I looked at him. Meet, hey there. Beautiful night, isn't it? Trying not to sound like a complete moron, stranger. Yes. He paused before he said that, almost like he couldn't speak. He had a droning to his voice like he had a speech impediment or something. His voice sounded like a fucking nail on a chalkboard. Scratchy plus the stutter before his words. It gave me the nastiest feeling. Literal chills. One word and I was afraid of him. I deal with sex offenders, domestic violence, and drug dealers daily. And this guy had me feeling this way after one word. Me, did you come out here to throw some line too? This time he did not answer me. He started to shake. Almost like he was about to have a seizure, except he was still staring right at me. And now he was making a straining noise with his throat. Like he was growling. Fucking growling. A human. A grown man growling at me in a truly disturbing tone 6 miles from the nearest house. Alone. My first instinct is to identify myself. I grabbed my credentials off-duty badge from my back pocket as I started to grab my tackle and chair. I put everything where I could pretty much pick up and go. But as I look up he is still doing it, still making that noise. Me, takes off headlamp and points it at credentials. City police officer, please sir keep calm and keep your hands visible to me. He would not stop, he only got louder. The thought that should be going through your head right now is exactly what was going through mine. What the fuck or what the fuck do I do now? I moved my light from the hand it was in into the hand with the credentials in it and reached for my CCW. Concealed carry weapon, call me a hothead but honestly, what would you do? I am cornered here. He is standing right by the only walkway off the dock. Not to mention the only way to my truck. Right as I pulled it from my holster this guy lets out a screech. Not a scream. A screech. I can say that is very close to the loudest thing I have ever heard with complete certainty. I jumped, honestly it was not expected at all. I get my light and weapon back on target, or at least where he was. I could hear brush and rocks moving. It seemed as if the noise was everywhere. I'd hear it here or over there. I decided to run to the truck. I didn't pick up anything, I just ran. More noises, they are legitimately behind me at this point. I dove in the truck and got out of Dodge. That's all that happened. Maybe a little anticlimactic, but this is a true story and I am typing it on the internet. That drive back home was quite a train of thoughts. I haven't been out fishing alone since.
Second story. This story was shared by you/strange accounts. When it rains in the woods. It's raining again. To be honest with you, I'm terrified of rain. I never leave the house when it's storming outside. But to give myself some credit, I never used to be like this. I used to love watching the rain fall from outside the windows, but now I always have my curtains pulled tight across the edges of the windowsill. I wish I could show you what made me the way I am, partly to warn you, partly to verify myself. But I can't. I can only write out my story like it's some sort of fantasy. As if it's just another bizarre story on the internet that deserves to be forgotten in a week. If you see it like that, then that's fine. But I won't forget. I'll never forget. In 2012, I was a 21-year-old college student. I was absolutely madly in love with nature and all things wild. I had spent my childhood roaming up and down tree lines fantasizing about mythical creatures and fantastic monsters. Now there I was in 2012 as an adult, studying forestry with dreams of defending those tree lines and fantasies I held so dear. I was absolutely ecstatic when my professor announced an opportunity for some extra credit. He suggested that we spend a few days of our upcoming break walking along some trails and paths to remind ourselves why we were doing what we were doing. As an avid hiker, I knew of a hiking trail a few hours over from our town that offered plenty of room to walk with very little crowding. The only ones who really walked more than a few minutes down the trail were the park rangers, and the chances of seeing one of them on the ever-winding and expanding trails of the forest seemed small. "Hey Lily, want to take a trip down to the preserve with me?" I asked as the bell finished tolling, signaling the end of the school day. The girl next to me, Lily, was a quiet and sweet girl. She had long brunette hair that stretched just past her shoulders and gentle green eyes. She was the type of person who people admired from afar. Beautiful but silent. A passing joke or compliment would make her smile, but she'd very rarely comment back. To most, that'd make them move on to the next person. To me, that made me want to be closer to her. We'd been friends for a while at this point. Whether or not any sort of romantic intent was had between us, I couldn't say. We just knew we connected on some sort of level. "Yeah, of course. Just tell me when." She looked into my eyes with a soft smile on her face. I smiled back at her. I hoped this trip would turn out well. A few days passed. Lily and I spent our free time in stores gathering food, supplies, and tents together. Soon enough, we were all packed up and ready to head out. We took my small car with our bags tied down on the roof and took the highway a few hours east. By the time we got there, it was mid-afternoon. Still plenty of time to walk, but also a bad time to find parking. There was plenty of people here walking their dogs, setting up lunches, and walking the paths. "I thought you said it'd be quiet?" Lily asked with a slight snicker. I rolled my eyes in response. "I'm sure these kids aren't planning on hiking a few days in. It'll get quiet, I promise." I spun around and began taking our large packs off of the roof of the vehicle. For as big as they were surprisingly easy to carry. Lily slipped the straps over her shoulders and waited for me to start heading towards the park. As we approached the trail's entrance, we saw a ranger loosely standing guard. "You guys heading in?" he asked. There was no hostility or caution in his tone. He was just merely asking a simple question. "Yeah, that's all right?" I questioned the fit middle-aged man. "Of course, just let me know your names and take my card. If you need anything, call down to the station. There's a couple ranger shacks deeper in. Feel free to use them if you need to, just make sure to clean up." The ranger gave a welcoming smile and handed me a small business card for the local ranger station. "Thank you." "Oh, and my name's Max. This is Lily." Lily gave a small nod at the ranger, and he nodded back respectfully. "Well, Max and Lily, you enjoy yourselves out there. We'll be patrolling around, so if you see us, don't be scared to say hi." With those words, the ranger backed away from the entrance, and we began our trek. We spent half of the first day slowly walking in quiet appreciation. There's something so liberating about walking with no time limit. It's like all of the world's stress slides right off your back, and the only thing you have to worry about is yourself. In that exact moment, you're all that matters. No bills, no studies, no cares. Just avoid snakes and strange plants and you're all set. It wasn't long into our journey before the sun began to nestle itself behind the trees in the warm, but steadily dropping temperature of the late afternoon's winds began sweeping under our sweaty clothes. Let's find a clearing to settle into, Lily said, her head tilting from one direction to the other looking for a place to set up. I nodded in approval and saw a small opening further down the path, clearly made by others who took a similar trip. It only took a few minutes to set up our tents in the clearing and to start a small fire. After all that walking and hard work, we were finally ready to be off our feet for a while. Lily plopped herself down on the opposite side of the fire I was sitting at and pulled out a granola bar to eat. I felt a rumble in my stomach and pulled out one of my own. "This place is really beautiful," she said, taking a large bite out of the bar. "Yeah, haven't seen many animals yet though." I unwrapped my food and placed it on my lips ready to take a bite. I quickly glanced over at Lily and froze. In the increasingly darkening forest just off the trail, just behind Lily, was something about the size of half a football. It was cloaked in the darkness, but I assumed it had to have been some sort of small critter. I began to squint my eyes trying to focus on it, but whatever it was seemed to fade out of existence, going straight into the ground. "Everything all right?" Lily asked. I realized it must have seemed like I was staring at her with food half in my mouth. I laughed and shrugged, shaking my head softly. "Yeah, sorry. I thought I saw an animal or something off in the woods. It was small. Could have just been a rabbit or something. It must have burrowed into the ground though." My friend peered over her shoulder into the silent woods and looked around. I knew she wouldn't see anything, whatever it was, left as quickly as I caught sight of it. We ended up finishing our meal, extinguishing the fire and climbing into our separate tents. I slept like a log. All of that walking put me out like a light. It wasn't until the morning that I woke up. I stumbled out of the tent, nearly tripping on the small fabric ledge at the exit of my portable shelter. The hot and humid summer's morning sun hit me like a pile of bricks. "Just so you know, I think we need to watch out for snakes," Lily said softly while I was wiping my brow. I looked over at her to see her undoing the tent supports from the forest floor. "Did you see one?" I asked, bending down and following suit with the camp cleanup. "I think so. I heard something rubbing on the bottom of my tent last night." I opened my eyes and the indents on my walls looked like a pretty thick snake trying to wiggle its way in. She didn't seem bothered by the potential late-night visitor, so I kept her warning in my mind but continued on. As our journey went on, we realized that every step we took there was another blotch in the sky. Somehow a storm was brewing overhead that none of the forecasts we had watched warned us of. "How much longer until it rains?" Lily was interrupted by a large thunderclap nearby in the clouds. I felt the earth tremor below us before a few raindrops began falling from the dimly lit sky. "Thanks, Lily," I said, arching my head towards her direction. She scoffed and I laughed. The rain was little more than a small drizzle at that moment, but it was clear it was going to get worse. "Let's hurry and find a place to set up." I watched as she began to increase her pace, slowly moving from a walk into a jog, heading deeper down the trail. I followed suit right next to her. For a while, it seemed like we weren't going to find a clearing anytime soon. We were already on the verge of being considered undoubtedly drenched, and to our luck, at that exact moment of thought, another strong explosion of thunder erupted from above. This time the floodgates were opened. Rain began to fall with a purpose and with enough force to erupt on impact, splashing everything nearby with the drop's watery contents. "Hey, right over there," I heard Lily yell out, just barely audible through the thunderous rain. She was running off of the main path down a small side trail nearby. I looked at where she was heading and saw a small cabin. I ran off the path with her. With each step, more and more mud thrust itself against my legs. I increased my speed hoping to catch up to my light-footed friend, but something caught me off guard. The tip of my foot slid underneath something and my momentum carried me downwards, face first into a mud bath. For a few seconds I was dazed, just laying down in the runny muck pit. I eventually looked down to my feet and saw what looked like a thin tree root also caked in dirt erupting out of the ground. But as my eyes kept on the root, those initial assumptions fell to the wayside. The shimmering of the mud is what made me realize that whatever this object was, it was moving just beneath the mud. Then it clicked in my head. The snakes Lily had brought up. I had just tripped over one of them. I felt a shiver cross over my back, and I jolted back up to my feet and continued on my path, abandoning that snake behind. Without another incident, I made it to the cabin doors and busted inside, finally free from the hurricane-like storm. Wow. A familiar voice rang out in the shack. I looked over to see a drenched but otherwise clean Lily staring at me with an amused smile on her face. Decide to have a wrestling match out there? Haha, funny, I said, looking down at myself. Mud was dripping off of just about every pore of my body. I think I met one of your snakes you mentioned out there. It decided to give me a little trip. Oh really? Lily said as she grabbed me and turned me around, searching the pack on my back for something to help me clean up. You were right. They're pretty thick. I wonder what kind they are. I can't imagine them being venomous being that wide. I felt the hands of my companion yanking out fabric from my pack. I took some time to look around the cabin as Lily pulled the towels free. It was wooden, old, and completely empty. There was a cooking stove off to one side, but other than that it looked very sparse. Clearly it was only meant for a quick one-night stay. Here, get yourself cleaned up. I turned back around and Lily handed me a bundle of towels. I immediately wiped off my face and brow. The dirt was already starting to dry and stick to my skin. Thanks, I replied to her as she began setting up her things. I put my pack down against the door and walked over to a window, still wiping myself down. I watched as the rain continued its assault on the earth, the dirt running like rivers down the valleys and trails, both natural and man-made. It looks terrible outside, I remarked. I heard a small groan of acknowledgement come from behind me. I let my eyes trail over the forested wetland over to the path we took to get up here. My body locked up when I saw something right where I tripped. Something was protruding from the ground like a small pillar. I rubbed the inside of the window fruitlessly to clear off the fog and obstructing rain. I could barely make out what looked like a thick, partially submerged branch broken off on one end with small twigs splintering off skyward. Hey, come and look at this. I called out to Lily, who was still fondling around with her bags. Is it the snake? She asked, rising to her feet. I don't think so. It looks weird though. I watched the mud-coated object get hammered by rain as Lily approached and peered outside. Is that a broken tree root? She suggested. I could only shrug. Whatever it was wasn't moving. Wait, Lily chimed in again. Look at the color. As more and more of the rain ran its way down the object, the less obstructed by mud the object became. I narrowed my eyes, pushing past the raindrops on the window, and noticed exactly what Lily was talking about. Whatever was under that mud was a pale shade of gray. Oh my God. Lily gasped and grabbed her mouth. What is it? I turned and looked at her, my eyebrow upturned in confusion. Look at the end of it, she said, holding her breath. I turned my gaze back outward and focused in. I felt my heart drop. Fingertips. It was an arm reaching out of the ground, still as the grave. Oh my God. My voice wavered slightly. We should call the Rangers and get them out here. Where's their card? She asked, hand extended towards me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a wet but legible business card. Without hesitation, Lily snatched it out of my hand and began dialing the number in. Hello, I'd like to report something on one of the trails. She paced back and forth on the squeaky cabin floors. I turned and kept my gaze on the hand. It looked petrified in place, fingers eagerly reaching towards the sky, letting the water rush over it. We're at . She began to stutter. We're at, I heard the voice on the other side of the phone chirp up and Lily nodded. Hey Max, can you take a step outside and tell me what number's next to the door? I peeled my eyes away from the hand. I felt an increasingly oppressive air pressing its way inside the cabin. I shook my intuition away and walked to the door. I opened it up and stepped outside. I peered towards the arm and could see it more clearly without the blurry window between us. It was hairless, smooth, and the fingernails seemed clean and trimmed. The water that gushed over it almost seemed to vanish on impact as if it was some sort of sponge. I had to force my eyes away from it to view the number on the wall. 17. I took a deep breath, repeating the number in my head before the sound of a loud clap echoed off behind me. I jumped slightly on edge. I turned back towards the direction of the arm and saw nothing in its place. Just the mud quickly running down the trail. I swallowed hard and rushed back inside. The number's 17, but I think the arm fell back into the mud. It's not there anymore. Lily's eyes went wide as she relayed that information over to the dispatcher. It wasn't long until she pulled the phone away from her ear and hung up. They told us to stay put, and that this storm's not going to pass anytime soon. They said they've got a ranger on the way, and the police have been informed, but it might take them a while to reach us out here. I bit my lip and looked back outside towards the empty path. I hope it didn't get dragged away by the current. I mumbled. Lily came up right beside me, joining me at the window. I'm sure they'll be able to follow that mud slick down to wherever it goes. On the bright side, that rain cleaned you up a bit. She gave a reassuring smile, and I looked down at myself. My clothes were still riddled with mud, but the rain on my skin seemed to have washed away most of the dirt. I guess that's always a plus, I said stoically. Come on, Max, let's make ourselves at home at least. I'll just lock the door in case, well, you know. Her voice trailed off. In case there's a killer out there? I mumbled at her as she walked over to the door and flipped the lock. She turned around and averted her eyes from my gaze, choosing instead to continue her mission of getting set up. After a few minutes of silence, we had our food laid out in front of us. We had agreed that once the ranger gets here, our little expedition was over. We had seen more than enough in just the past 2 days than we could have in a lifetime. Let's eat and try to get some sleep, I said, chowing down on some extra rations. Lily nodded and joined in on the feast. With full stomachs, we set up for bed. I noticed my friend kept looking out towards the darkened windows. I could feel tension in the air. Everything all right? I asked. Lily shook her head dismissively. I just feel weird, like I'm being watched. I'm sure it's nothing, but just to be safe, she ripped off her pillowcase, then mine, before walking over to the windows and draping them over the glass as makeshift curtains. I just don't want anything looking in at us while we sleep. I don't blame you. I made my way to my bedroll and caseless pillow before lying down, trying to get comfortable. Lily did the same. It was a few hours into the night before I heard Lily's hushed voice. Max, wake up. Do you hear that? I opened my eyes less groggy than I expected and met Lily's gaze. She was staring at the wooden door of the cabin. I spent a few seconds watching the door before I lightly saw the handle of the door jiggle. Someone was trying to get in. What do we do? Lily asked. I was speechless. Maybe it's the dash. Our whispered conversation was interrupted by a loud knocking coming from the other side of the wooden door. Bang, bang, bang. I jumped to my feet. It's got to be the cops. I began my slow, meticulous walk to the door. Who's out there? Silence. Hello? I yelled again. Abruptly, the banging started again, loud enough to drown out my voice. I took a step back from the door and kneeled close to the ground. Each impact on the door rocked the wooden frames of the small cabin. I watched as one of the pillowcase curtains began to slowly slip off the window. No, Lily whispered, tears in her eyes. I rushed over to the window just as the fabric fell and was met face to face with the darkness outside. The banging on the door stopped suddenly. I very carefully kneeled down and grabbed the fabric in my hands to toss back over the window. Thud. Appearing out of the darkness was the palm of a hand. It slapped the window with a heavy force. I could only see the pale palm in the shroud of blackness outside. I quickly threw the pillowcase back on the window and backed up to Lily. She was shivering, her eyes wide with fear. That was the hand, Max. That was the hand that was outside earlier. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. I wrapped my arms around Lily for as much my comfort as hers. Thud, 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 thud. The wet palm of the hand kept slapping against the glass. I could hear ripples of cracks spreading along the window pane. I squeezed onto Lily as she balled up and kept my eyes focused on the pillowcase covering the glass, hoping it wouldn't fall and expose that lifeless arm again. With one last thud, it stopped. A light shone through the fabric of the window mere seconds after the attack halted. I could hear the struggling sounds of wheels rolling up towards the cabin. I let out a sigh and a prayer that the Rangers had finally made it. With the sounds of the wheels stopping just a few yards away, I finally heard a voice call out from the void outside. Lily? Max? You in there? The voice sounded familiar. It was the Ranger from the day prior. I slid to my feet, dragging Lily with me. Yeah, we're inside, but someone's out there. I yelled. I rushed over to the door and opened it to see the Ranger standing stiff off in the middle of the small opening in front of the cabin. He was facing us, but the light from his rover coupled with his hat covered his body in intense shadows. His body seemed rigid. Come out of that box and we'll get you home. The Ranger said. His voice seemed different this time, disjointed from his body. I backed up more into the doorway and watched as two impossibly long fingers trailed their way from behind the Ranger's head and made their way across his cheeks to his mouth. They slid inside with little resistance and began pulling his lips outward in a mockingly gruesome smile. Then they kept prying. I watched as his lips strained with the force of the fingers inside of his mouth. His lips became white with the stress placed against them before a shower of red erupted from his mouth, parting the centers of his lips like sliced meat. I'm so perfectly happy. A voice called out from just behind the Ranger, its voice thick and unnatural. I looked for the source and froze. There, right next to the Ranger's feet, was a half-submerged human face dug deeply into the mud. Its black cold eyes shone from some unknown source. Whatever this was a monster of the strictest definition. Its gaze was so vastly separated from humanity that there was no common ground between us. As I locked eyes with this thing, human in shape and deviled in eyes, I saw the Ranger fall into the mud. Just behind his head was a long spider-like arm stretching out of the ground, seemingly changing its size and shape as if it only faintly followed the laws of this reality. The Ranger's body twitched and spasmed on the ground as more and more lifeless hands began to slither out from the mud, wrapping their hands around his body. I was so thirsty, but now I'm so very hungry. The submerged had called out unblinkingly towards me. Without another warning, the Ranger's body was ripped under the earth and devoured by the mud. The ground where he was shifted and bubbled over like a small eruption. The creature's eyes stared at me with a deadening gaze. It was observing me. I let out a small chirp from my mouth. Without changing expression, the head effortlessly started gliding through the earth towards the cabin, fingers and arms popping out from the earth around it like fins from a shark. I had stored enough courage to slam the door shut and lock it before running back over to Lily, who saw the whole thing. What is that? She asked, her voice trembling. I shook my head and slumped down next to her. I don't know. We sat in silence until the sounds of scratching came from below the floorboards. Hundreds of fingers tearing away flesh to the bone, trying to burrow their way upwards. All we could do was sit in the corner furthest away from the windows and pray they didn't get to us. That night we watched as the floors pulsated upwards and downwards as the foundation began to crumble. Those arms were going to drag us and our wooden coffin downwards into the earth. I didn't know what to do. I sat there as the floor cracked open and mud crept up through the seams of the boards like blood flowing from a vein. I sat waiting to die, but Lily had other plans. She grabbed my hand and yanked me up my feet. She stared at the door for a split second before sprinting off with me in tow. She bursted open the door and ran towards the ranger's vehicle. Luckily for us, the ranger never shut it off before the earth took him down. We both hopped on its seat and zipped off the path back from where we came. I hazarded a glance back towards the cabin to see it crumbling into the ground, but there was something else there. Still half submerged on the path mere yards away from us was that unblinking head, its black eyes shone dead set and emotionless on our escape. We kept driving and driving for God knows how long, until we hit some other rangers who were on a scouting mission up to us and their missing comrade. We told them everything we could, but the looks of disbelief said enough to us. We were labeled as emotionally distressed and unreliable witnesses. The powers that be listed the disappearance of the ranger and the cabin as accidental by case of mudslide. Now, every time it rains, I wonder if somewhere out in the woods a single head peers out on the trails waiting for someone to pass by, a million hands waiting just below the surface to drag them down into the earth. Third story. This story was shared by you/ZachBabyTV. Wendigo's Spirit Long-Lost Journal of a Viking Explorer. Last year I was hiking with a buddy of mine in the woods in eastern Newfoundland. For those who don't know, it's in the far eastern part of Canada. We are both originally from the Vancouver and have been avid hikers and campers for many years, traveling to all parts of Canada and currently working on our visas to America actually. While we were on a 2-day hiking trip camping where we saw fit, we stumbled off path as we thought we saw a cave farther off into the distance. After about 3 to 4 minutes of walking off the dirt path into the woods, we approached it, and indeed it was a cave. Knowing that caves are super neat but also very dangerous for many reasons, we just looked around for a bit before deciding if we should check inside if it's clear or not, as it would make a good spot to have camp for the night. Caves are home to many animals ranging small to large, bears, wolves to name a couple of the more dangerous animals to be exact. We eventually grabbed our flashlights from our backpacks and entered the cave entrance cautiously. The cave was pitch black, and once we had walked inside, noticing how deep it actually was. From the outside, it looked like a 6 to 7 foot wide opening with about a 5-foot ceiling. But once you stepped inside, it had a good open space, I'd guess to be about 15 by 15, which was more than enough space for the two of us to set up camp and get a fire going for the night. In the back of the space was what looked like a small pathway of some sort. It was narrow and looked like the earth cracked it just enough for someone to walk through it. Where it led we had no clue, and I wasn't really wanting to find out at that moment. We were tired, looking to rest, and didn't feel like venturing off into the uncharted cave deeper and risking falling or getting hurt or stuck, or God knows what else happens to people in caves. There was a faint water dripping noise down that dark pathway which echoed throughout the cave. Sounded spooky to me, but then again, maybe there's some fresh water nearby we can collect for tomorrow hike, I told my buddy. Once we set up our things, I told him I'd go check it out and see if I could find the source of the water, as I held out water containers in my now empty pack and my flashlight in my right hand. The pathway was twisted and narrow, and honestly it was just better that I went alone, plus I doubt my bud would have went with me anyways. He was tired as hell and was just ready to eat and go to sleep. I tucked and squeezed myself through with my pack and eventually found the source of the water after a minute or so walking deeper into the cave system. This cave kept going and going. I could see further ahead, but I found the source thankfully not too far in. There was a small stream that flowed down the rocky surface wall into a small puddle-like area, then disappearing into the rocks and earth. As I shunned my flashlight around, I happened to come across a pouch of some sort which was made of animal fur. I thought it was an animal at first and stood frozen in my tracks. I walked over to the fur ball and grabbed it. I realized the fur was just wrapped around something flat and hard in its center. As I looked, it seemed to have unraveled an old as hell looking leather book of some sort. I was really memorized about the find, but then realized how thirsty I was and took care of filling up our water containers first and bring this book and fur back with me back to our little campsite at the cave entrance. Once I got back, my friend had already gotten the fire going, which felt really nice as I sat down handing him his water. The night was on its way out with the sun starting to set. I told my friend about the book and let him take a look at it. He was always the history buff anyways. I just liked video games and hot chicks. He told me that this journal looked really old and is really surprised it in the shape that it's in. He pointed to the off shapes that were on the cover and on parts of the pages on the inside. They looked like runes he mentioned. I didn't recall what runes were, and he told me that in fact that was the way of communication writing back in the Viking days. As he read, I mumbled to himself, "Dude, this is written in English, which is odd unless this person or Viking traveler was educated or had traveled more than most." He read on for a few minutes and told me to check it out as it mentioned this cave on one of the pages. He handed me the book and he laid back onto his mat and started to relax. I, on the other hand, was totally excited. Not only did I just find some ancient Viking journal in some cave in the middle of nowhere, but it was readable too. "This has to be worth some money," I said to him. He opened his eyes and just replied, "Dude, just read it or go to sleep." I snarked at him, and I laid my back up against the side cave wall and started to read the notes from inside this journal. "If you are finding this journal, that means I am dead. My name is Björn Erling, and the year is 1004 AD. I do not know the exact date of these entries as I have been stuck here in this cave for some time now. Our ship had arrived to the shores of this newfound land several weeks prior to these entries. There was 40 of us in total and have built a small village right off the shore past the wood line. We have an altercation with the natives of this land as they do not speak any language that I have heard before. They attacked our fort on the second week we are here. Several of our members have died and most of theirs too in the process. We can't seem to communicate properly with them, and they keep attacking in the middle of the night, and we are trying our best to lessen our defenses. We have built walls around our village, but they always seem to find a way inside, picking us off one by one. They're not big people, quite small in fact, but there are many, and our next ship isn't due here for another week or more. I was out hunting with a brother of mine in these woods. We went deeper than we have been as our people are hungry and we needed meat. The sun was dim, and the colors above were quite pleasant to see when it was visible from all the trees overhead. We started hearing noises echoing around us in the woods, not knowing what they were. We followed them. No sense at turning back. These sounds would have already startled off any catch we may have been tracking. As we continued deeper and deeper into the woods, the noises and snapping sounds became louder. We had no idea what was in store for us at the time, but we had to investigate. During our proustite, that when we both heard a familiar-sounding voice speaking to us. It sounded like one of our other Viking brothers back at the village that had gone missing during one of the attacks for the natives. "Bjorn, help me. They have me trapped here, and I cannot escape." My brother screamed, "By Odin, where are you?" Silence. The voices didn't reply. I gripped my sword handle on my waist, and my brother held his bow with a firm grip. "Do you think that was really Kinjo?" "I don't know," I replied, "but we need to find out either way. It def sounded like him." We heard our brother speak again, but this time it spoke to use twice, but from different directions in front of us. "Levi, why did you not help me in the village? Hurry, I don't have much time." My brother Levi ran off to the left and motioned with his arm, pointing for me to follow the other sound to the front right from our location. I nodded and readied my sword. After we had split up, I started to have a feeling of dread, and airy feeling was washing over me. This felt off. None of this seemed right. The natives didn't speak our language, and that voice did sound like our brother Nook, but it was off in a way too. Not soon after, that's when I heard the screaming. The screaming of Levi. Rushing back in the direction I saw him walk to, I hurried as fast as I could, no longer caring about keeping the silence as I ran and screamed out to him, trying to find his whereabouts. Farther in the distance is when I saw it. I cannot even call it a man. It was some kind of forest creature. It was skinny like it was starting and shaped like a man from what I could muster. Its long arms clawed my friend, dragging his now lifeless body further into the dark woods. This creature had antlers on its head like some kind of deer. We have gods like this back home. Had they followed us here to this new land and now punishing us for becoming Christians? I was in total shock, but there was no choice in the matter, and I was losing sight of them in the dark now, and there was a good distance still between us. I ran as fast as I could, but even in doing so still couldn't keep up with this creature dragging Levy. I picked up his bow off the grass along the chai and ended up finding this cave on this hillside. I just knew that creature had taken my brother into that cave. There was nowhere else in eyesight where it could have gone and disappeared to. Once in the cave, I explored as much as I could after making a makeshift torch with some fabric from my clothing on a nearby stick I had found. The space was tight. I found the bloody drag marks right away, so my hunch was correct. Levy was brought somewhere inside this cave system. I had gotten lost a couple of times within this cave. It is more than meets the eye, but always seem to find my way back to the water source as the constant dripping which echoes the labyrinth halls leads me back to here. I cannot leave him. I cannot leave my brother. I must avenge him and place his bow in his hand so that the Valkyries may take his soul to heaven or Valhalla to meet his family in paradise forevermore. I'm writing this all down with the best of my knowledge in case I do not make it back out of this cave from which I ventured. Someone must know what happened to us. Someone must be let aware of this creature out in the woods. I hear my brother calling me now, far off, echoing off somewhere in this cave. I must end this log for now. If I return, I will update what I find. Goodbye for now. That was the last thing written in this journal. The rest of the pages were blank. Dude, wake up. I have to tell you something. Fourth story. This story was shared by you / Baked Bean Chip Dip. Something is seriously wrong. Help me. This may seem so fake, but please somebody hear me out and help me. What is going on? My name is Marcy. I'm a 17-year-old gender-fluid individual. Pronouns she / they / it. I live in the upper Midwestern part of America. I am being hunted by something, but I don't know what. Weird things have started from a very young age, but the last few years have been the weirdest. I should start with the walker that hunted my neighborhood. I was in my room with the window open and I heard this sound. It almost sounded like a sobbing baby. I ran downstairs and said, "What the hell was that?" And my brother, 11M, and mom, 49F, were standing in the kitchen with the back door open. I started laughing at them and said that they scared me, but they looked at me with the same look I had when I had heard the sound. They were saying they didn't make any noise and that they heard it too. I did not believe them and told them that they got me and that the joke was over. I did not find it funny. I suffer with awful mental health issues like psychosis and BPD, so hallucinations happen quite often. They know about my mental health, so it struck me as odd for them to play that kind of joke on me. When they continued to look scared, I realized they weren't joking. They started to tell me they heard a noise that sounded like something trying to mimic the sound of a grunting man. I told them I heard the sound of a crying baby. I sent my brother to his room so he wouldn't be freaked out. Me and my mom stepped outside to see if we could hear anything else. She pointed out that my dog was terrified. I could see my dog trembling and staring across the yard. After a bit, all the dogs in the neighborhood started barking, including my dog. After about 5 minutes of barking, they all stopped abruptly. My mom and I were super weirded out. Then we heard another dog start barking. The weird thing is that it didn't sound like a dog, but something trying to mimic the sound of a dog. It sounded like it was coming from our yard, but the only dog that was there was my dog, Lucy. She shook and ran inside. The barking was slow and extremely unnerving. I heard a neighbor shout, "Shut the fuck up." So obviously he heard it too. The barking sounded closer, so we went inside and closed the door. We went around and locked every door and window. That happened almost a year ago. Now I have been struggling immensely with mental health issues, and on the 1st of this year, I tried to take my own life. I was super close to succeeding until the cops found me. It's just gotten worse. 2 days ago, a mark appeared on my collarbone. It looks like a semicircle with a tiny circle under it. It burned and then suddenly appeared. Yesterday during school, I opened my laptop to do some schoolwork and it started to freeze. Then the screen went black. When it turned back on, everything was red, and there was an awfully terrible face in the middle. I freaked out and shut the laptop, pushing it away from me. My partner asked if I was okay, and I asked if they saw it too. They said they weren't looking and asked what I saw. I didn't want to seem crazy by telling them. My luck has been awful and I keep hearing the whistling noise. Today I went face first into the ice. I'm all swollen and cut up. I noticed today another mark, identical to the first mark on my neck now. The first mark looks like it's gotten more prominent and it hurts more. It looks like a significant design and I'm looking for answers. I feel like I'm going insane and I'm getting very little sleep. Please somebody help me. Fifth story. This story was shared by you/Don Keeksotrozy. What lurks in the forest beyond the tree lines? How do I explain this? If I tell you, will you please believe me? I hope you will. Call me crazy, call me sane, call me a believer, call me an attention seeker. Call me whatever you please. It is only due to other experiences that I have had the courage to post this in the no sleep community. But I beg of you to listen to what I tell you. Because they're real, they very real as my shaking hands as I write this. The things, the creatures that inhabit the forest at night. It all started when I decided to go to a survival camp that would last 10 days. We met at a campground with a group of 5 other survivalists and a group leader and his assistant. They would stay with us for 3 days and show us techniques, things like set up a tent, how to identify local flora that was edible, and how to set traps, etc. Each of us were given a backpack with items that you would commonly carry while on a hike, like chapstick, binoculars, some protein bars, a lighter, and matches. We were allowed to bring one personal item, and my choice was a hatchet. For 3 days, our group did several things. We used the river to get water, which we liked, boil for 15 minutes to kill anything in the water. There are a few natural springs in the area that you can drink fresh, and the guide showed us these. We learned how to make lean-to, how to use rock walls to make shelter with fire, heating it up to keep warm, how to build hammocks out of kudzu vines, what wild strawberries look like, along with several other things. They did not show us mushrooms, as these are easily misidentified, so they don't chance that for legal reason, but the puffball ones are the only ones they allowed us to pick as they're easily identifiable. We also made traps like snares and rock falls, along with making fishing line out of kudzu vines and makeshift hooks, or finding fish in quiet zones of the creek where you could trap trout. We learned how to make fire with binocular glass, matches and lighter, and proper TP builds for you kindling. After the 3 days, we were let go on our own. You would stay at base camp, and the leader would walk you several miles into the undergrowth. Each of us were taken at different times and given a satellite radio in case we had an emergency. So we set off on our own and made the best of it. The group leaders would stay at base and wait 5 days, then come get you. Day 1. Nothing out of the ordinary. I set a few traps, built a decent lean-to on the side of a large boulder. Fire is doing a solid job of heating the rock wall to keep it pretty warm inside. The air was crisp, not quite cold. Some drizzle, but no deluges. I'm close enough to the river that I only need to walk 70 yards or so. I'm not quite up the mountains, but on somewhat of a hill, surrounded by pawpaw, rhododendrons that are starting to bloom, catalpa, and several conifers. I ate half of a protein bar and collected quite a few plants. First night is quiet, only hear a few things out in the forest. It's very dark outside the firelight. I've collected enough wood to keep any critters at bay, namely black bears, as they can be curious. I was awoken at some point in the night by the sat phone. Another survivalist is complaining about some large animal walking around his campground. Seems to believe it's a bear, but it sounds like it's walking on 2 legs. Never says anything else the rest of the night. Night goes by without incident. But I will say, earlier I did find tracks that looked human but were indicative of a Bigfoot, as the footprint wasn't formed quite like ours. I wear a size 12 boot. I put my foot into the print, and it was a solid 5 inch longer. Now there are stories of wild men in this part of the country. I brushed the stories off until I saw that print, and from night 1 sat call. Night 3 is when everything went as shit. Around 1 a.m. is when I started question things when a large rock hit the back of my lean-to. I figured it was from the boulder, and something simply broke off, as rock slides are common around here. After that woke me up, I grabbed the flashlight and assessed the damage. I rolled the boulder off the shelter, and it wasn't too far from breaking it completely. I half-fist fixed it and figured I'd just fix it in the morning. I had caught a rabbit in a snare, and I cleaned it not far from camp. I'd say 100 yards off. That was when I heard a rattling sound similar to that of a rattlesnake. I shined the light that way, and that was when I saw it. It had black fur and nightmarish red eyes, giving it the look and style of a predatory black panther. It had a dark, feral appearance. It had the body of a massive tiger with a tail with scales at the end that shook to produce rattling sounds similar to that of a rattlesnake. Its eyes glowed a bright red and leaving trails of reddish lines as it moved through the trees watching me. It moved towards me carefully and cautiously just when I thought I was done for something screamed. It sounded like a gorilla when it gets angry, followed by a chuffing sound, like when a dog has drank too much water. That deep in the throat, like it's clearing it out. I turned back where I flashed my light, and the creature was gone. I stood there frozen in this tiny clearing, thinking a bear is finishing off the entrails of the rabbit I cleaned earlier. I have no weapons other than my hatchet and a pocket knife. I come out of my trance and walk over to my backpack, never taking my eyes off the wood line. Everything in the night is quiet. I only hear the river running and the logs crackling. I sit down with my hatchet and throw more logs on the fire, hoping that it gets large and hit enough to keep things at bay. I sit for maybe 30 minutes, and I'm kind of dozing off. Then another rock comes hurling from the left side of the forest and falls 10 yards away. I know the boulder didn't do this based on where this rock came from. Now I'm panicking. I stand up, hoping to make myself look large with my shadow on the boulder behind me. I hear the chuffing again, and smaller trees further in are clearly moving back and forth rather quickly. I can see a large black shape moving around the firelight just at the edge of the end of the light. 40 yards and maybe. I can hear this thing breaking limbs, crushing leaves with every step. Thing was at least 8 foot tall if I had to guess. It had long black hair and terrifying sharp teeth, but it was pretty far away from where I was. It's slowly moving away, but I could tell where the thing's head was watching me, as every now and again I'd see I shine. It flashed its teeth like a baboon by folding its lips back, and then walked away further into the woods, and the sound started getting fainter and fainter. And I could hear it go into the river and cross it. That loud shush sound from the water as it crossed were only a few steps. It was about 20 feet across the river at this point. I sat back down and contemplated what to do. It's around 2 a.m., and I have a few hours till daylight. I don't want to walk the 4 miles back in the dark in a place I'm not familiar with. Fast forward 2 hours, it's 4-ish a.m. The sat phone turns on, and a guy is screaming into it. Something is trying to kill me. I've had several ricks thrown at me. A large man is outside my shelter. I can hear it. This isn't a bear. I don't know what it is. But I need help. Silence. 15 minutes, 20 minutes go by. Another guy comes on. Something did that to me last night, but I thought it was a bear. I stayed here thinking I knew what it was. Rocks weren't thrown though, but I could hear it walking the perimeter of my camp. It's close to 5 a.m. now. If I can make it a few hours until daylight, I'm fine. All the forest sounds have returned. I'm still waiting. Around 7:15 a.m. and check my backpack to see if I could find my radio, and it's gone. I start to panic because sun isn't quite up yet, but that eerie dawn light is filling the land and the clearing is still pretty dark. I start gathering my things and start putting the fire out with dirt around the pit. And start to walk. Figure I have no choice at this point. As I'm walking, I hear something mimicking my footsteps. I stopped, and just before I put my foot down, I heard leaves crumble behind me. I ran as fast as I could deeper into the woods, losing my sense of direction. About 10 minutes into running, I see a cabin. I run in, and I slam the door behind me, placing everything I could in front of it. I'm writing this now, but out of my window, I can see it showing its teeth to me like a baboon trying to intimidate another animal, its glowing eyes just watching me. It's slowing walking around to the front door, running its massive hands against the outside of the cabin. It's beating the door down. I don't have much time left. Please, if you go into the forest, whether it be for a camping trip or hiking, beware of what lurks beyond the tree line. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comments section and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm. Welcome to Horror in Detail. Are you ready to embark on a chilling journey into the realms of darkness, the mysterious, and the bone-chilling world of horror stories? On this channel, we are dedicated to unraveling the most terrifying tales that will send shivers down your spine. First story. I care for cryptids. Just to be clear, I'm not actually certified in caring for these creatures. I don't work in a pet store like most people who care for cryptids do. I just live in a house in the woods of a state that happens to house multiple cryptids. To start off, I'm a 24-year-old female who lives in the woods. It may seem scary to some people, but I honestly prefer it. It's calm, quiet, and I'm alone most of the time. The house I live in is 2 floors with plenty of space for what I now use it for. To give a quick view, the first floor has 1 bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen, living room, and sunroom. The second has 2 bedrooms, bathrooms, and another living space. I'm sure you guys would prefer to hear about cryptids though, so here's the story of the first time I cared for a cryptid. It was a dark Tuesday night. The woods were quiet. I was sitting in the living room downstairs, reading a Stephen King book. The clock ticked from the corner, or the room. I didn't know the time. I had up to have a small snack when I heard a loud snort. Or maybe it was a cry. I wasn't sure at the time. I brushed it off, believing it was the wildlife. I pulled out some chips and water. I was back in the living room before a minute has passed. But the sound happened again. Only louder. It sounded like it had moved with me. Once again, I brushed it off, thinking it was an animal smelling the food. But it kept happening. It sounded like a cry of pain and hunger. I couldn't keep ignoring it. So I pulled out a gun from my safe and tucked it in my waistband. I crossed the house to the window. I heard it. I peeked out the blinds. I tumbled backwards, breathing hard. What the hell was that? A dying man? Once I gathered my composure, I looked out the window again. Only this time it saw me. It growled and lunged at the window. I stumbled back, but I didn't hear a thump. I peeked back out. At this point, I was more interested than scared. It was laying on its back trying to scramble to its front. I saw blood pouring from its side. At this point, everything kinda blurred. I know I helped the cryptid, but I don't remember how I did. Only that when I woke up, it was on my couch in a deep slumber. When the cryptid woke up, it didn't attack me. It seemed more domestic than anything. It pattered around on the floor and even ate some bacon. There were bandages wrapped around its stomach, so I could only assume I helped it. I never thought cryptids were so domestic until I met one. I parted ways with the cryptid later on in the week. However, it still visits. I even installed a dog door so it could come in. Now though, just anything comes in. I've met many cryptids. The one that visited me first was a skinwalker. It was horrific the first time, but I've met so many I'm used to it. It's a ride, but I'm willing to share more stories. I even have contacts as of last week to help me feed and take care of them. Second story. This story was shared by you/Matheson Curator. There's a tiny building in the oil fields outside Bakersfield that I will avoid for the rest of my life. If you've ever driven between SoCal and NorCal, you know exactly the long stretch of nowhere I'm talking about. You take Interstate 5 with the tourists and the truckers, up the Grapevine and out into 1,000 miles of California farmland, past Bakersfield, avoiding Fresno, as one should. But if you do this drive enough times, like, for example, if you live in Los Angeles and your family lives in San Francisco, you start to get bored and look for things to do along the way. My mistake was getting bored. I have this book called Weird California about odd places and bizarre stuff, and a lot of them are out here in the farmland. This area just kind of breeds weirdness in people. Last time I made the drive, it was the world's largest box of raisins at the Sun-Made headquarters in Kingsburg, which was fine, but honestly just a big box. But this time, I wanted to try something spookier. Something more fun, at least. In a place called Elk Hills, west of I-5 and 119, you'll find a gigantic oil field. Machines pumping away all across the desert hills. Here's the closest I could get. Google Earth doesn't allow you inside the actual oil field grounds, which should have been a warning sign. Didn't notice the doubling glitch on the oil pump until now. What the book says is that, in the middle of this oil field, there's a tiny windowless building with a radio antenna. You take a scanner near it, and you can hear a voice reciting numbers and letters over and over, different every time. These things should be in the middle of Siberia, but here's one just off the highway, in a lonely oil field, just outside Bakersfield. California has its own special little numbers station. That's worth a visit, right? I get the only equipment I have, a cheap scanner I got on Amazon, because I live in a big city called Los Angeles engulfed in frantic chaos every other day, and I thought, who knows, maybe something like this would be useful. But I digress. I load up my girlfriend's car and start driving, heading north, and I make it to Elk Hills in about 2 hours. The oil field doesn't even have a full fence around it. If you're trying to get in, you can get in. It's practically an invitation. There's nobody here, no cars, no workers, no security, just a ton of oil pumps churning away and some lost chickens pecking around, wandering over from the farmland. And then, there it is. At the top of the next hill. Tiny windowless building with a radio antenna. Chain link fence around it. Boxed in. I turn on the scanner and I hear numbers right away. Echo Alpha Charlie incoming. Over. Echo Alpha Charlie incoming. Over. Copy. First thought is, holy shit, I got something. The big dumb Mulder and Scully instincts come alive. I can't help it. I floor it. I'm driving up the hill, and the voice comes back on the scanner. Same guy, same tone. Echo Alpha Charlie incoming. Request to execute. Over. I'm lifting my foot off the gas before I even realize it. Request to execute aren't the kinds of words I'm expecting to hear. I pull over. I get out. I leave the car. I'm looking up, scanning the horizon. Can't explain why. Don't know what I'm looking for. A helicopter? Spy plane? Incoming. What? All I hear are chickens pecking and oil pumps churning, a low industrial hum in every direction. The voice speaks at the same moment. I look back at the car and I realize it. Echo Alpha Charlie stopped. Request to execute. Over. Staring back at me, a California license plate. 5EAC 279. The voice repeats. Echo Alpha Charlie stopped. Request to execute target. Over. I'm moving. I'm back in the car. I'm hitting the gas. I'm trying not to freak out. Target is advancing. Request to execute. Over. I slam on the brakes. Violent U-turn. Back the way I came. Target is aggressive. Request to execute. Over. I pull over. I'm panicking. I'm out of the car, raising my hands, not even sure where to look or what to say, just hoping to. Target is surrendering. Over. Am I? I guess I am. Who am I surrendering to? I've never felt such silence before, until the voice returns, and I know disappointment when I hear it. Copy. Disengaging. Recalling unit. Unit? Noise across the road. Something in the hills, just over the crest. Could be chickens. Could be my nerves. Target appears to understand. I look up the road, to the tiny windowless building on the next hill, watching over. Target is ordered to have a nice day. The scanner goes quiet with a squawk. I get in and I keep driving and I'm gone. Next time I'm taking the interstate, whatever that place is, I'm staying out of range. Third story. This story was shared by you/dogs34567. I'm a critted hunter and my last mission was in Nahanni Valley. So a little about myself before I get into the story. My name is Hector Roanoke and I've been a cryptid hunter for about 20 years now. I have an extensive military background. I enlisted into the U.S. Navy at the age of 18. My job was a FMF corpsman for a platoon of Marine Raiders. They taught me everything from shooting and fighting to the basic survival skills that I still use to this day. Eventually, my time in the service came to an end after 6 years due to personal reasons. Now, before I tell you about what happened in Nahanni Valley, I must tell you I've hunted every cryptid you could possibly name. I got the job through some connections. It was easy with my military background. Even though the first job almost made me quit on the spot, it's hard being a rookie and hunting an ancient Wendigo who has the strength of 10 men and the attitude of a pissed-off bear who's been awakened from hibernation. The pay was good though, so that made up for it. Anyways, I was given the task of going on an expedition into Nahanni Valley because out of the last group of hunters who were 6 strong, only 2 made it out, and one of those regrettably didn't include my friend Saul. Me and Saul had known each other since I was in the military. We were battle buddies, and there was no way I was going to accept that he was gone, so I volunteered for the job, and I was given it without second thought. Now I'm sure some of you have heard the kind of mysterious, unexplainable things that go on in Nahanni Valley, from headless men wandering the forest to outright sighting of ancient dinosaurs. The expedition was to last only 7 days and no more because of safety reasons, they said. But I didn't care. I was determined to find Saul and the other missing hunters. On the first day, I arrived at the valley and I started to make shelter in a cave by freshwater source. Everything was going well. At sunset, I started to hear weird noises like the wailing of a woman mixed with the call of a rabbit. At first, I thought it was a skinwalker and I wasn't worried one bit. But something was off about the way it was wailing. Skinwalkers cannot mimic animals and humans at the same time. The wailing kept getting closer, so I had to cover in some nearby foliage. What I saw shook me on a spiritual level. The creature was tall and black, not just the skin, but it was like a walking shadow. It had very long extremities with sharpest antlers I've ever seen mounted on its head, but the most chilling part was its eye sockets were empty, but gave off a red hue like a flame in the dark. Its hair reached well past its shoulders. I quickly recognized what it was: a stick Indian. If it wasn't for me picking up on what it was, this definitely would have been a bad fight to pick. I laid still until the thing passed over me. After it passed, I made a knot to myself to keep my guard up. After sunset, if stick Indians are here, I'd hate to see what else could be lurking around here. After my experience with the skin Indian, I decided to pack up and move camp to another location. I hiked about 3 miles down the river and found myself a nice spot by a fallen tree. I set up camp, went hunting, and started cooking the game I had caught later that day. I soon went to sleep. I woke up about 4 hours early and left my tent to take a leak. After I finished, I got done bleeding the snake. I heard a twig snap in the distance. I quickly ran to my camp and grabbed my hunting tomahawk to confront whatever was making a noise. This laid in the woods. That was when I saw it. It was a man, but this was no ordinary man. He was about 6 feet 6 inches and fit as a fiddle. I could recognize him from anywhere. It was one of the missing hunters. I put my tomahawk on my waist and approached him, but I noticed he was facing with his back to me. Then it dawned on me that not only was his back pointing towards me, but his head was missing. His was walking headless around the forest. The sight filled me with anger, sadness, and fear at the same time. I didn't know what I was dealing with. I slowly crept away and kept a big fire all night with my tomahawk in on hand and my gun in the other all night. What I saw that night really made me realize that I was in foreign territory. I decided to go for a hike around the area to get a better idea of the landscape. The area was beautiful. The birds were chirping. I hiked until sunset and went back to camp to rest and eat. After eating, I noticed that my campsite had footprints all around it. But these weren't normal-sized footprints. They were miniature, no bigger than a 4-year-old's footprints. I noticed one of the tents shaking. I readied my tomahawk, and when I opened it, a short creature no more than 3 feet tall jumped out at me and scurried into the forest. Damn near gave me a heart attack, but I couldn't help to laugh. I went to sleep laughing after that experience. Freaking little people, they're not dangerous, but they sure are noisy. I woke up at the crack of dawn to go fishing. I got tired of eating rabbit and pheasant meat every night, so I tried to mix it up a little. I put some rabbit foot on the line to see if I'd get lucky and bag a big meaty fish to cook tonight over the fire. After a few hours I got a bite. I tried to reel it in, but it wouldn't budge. Thought I was snagged on a log until all the line of the rod was gone. In an instant something in the water was stirring. I decided to take cover behind a big rock and watched a monster of a serpent breach the water's surface. I wanted to say it was an agapogo, but something about the spines were different, and this one seemed to be a juvenile. I stayed behind the rock until it was gone just in case, and moved up 5 miles downstream to fish there just in case the bastard was still lurking around. I caught a few salmon, so the trip wasn't disappointing. After seeing the general layout of the area, I started looking for clues indicating what happened to the team. My mission took me 8 miles into the valley. It was truly a beautiful sight to behold: crystal clear waters, beautiful plants, and some of the most beautiful flowers you'll ever see. I came upon the destroyed camp. Nothing immediately stood out to me until I found 2 human bodies. They were mangled beyond human comprehension in what looked like an act of brutality I've never seen in my life. I nearly started crying thinking about the pain they went through before dying. I gave them a proper burial and prayed to God the same thing didn't happen to Saul. Eventually returned to camp with a heavy heart and a feeling that every move I made was being carefully calculated by something. I slept with my gun loaded with a wolfsbane round in the chamber that night. Wolfsbane is hard to find, but boy does it pack a punch against the majority of cryptids out there. I've come to the realization that I'm being followed by something smart. I went to the nearby river to wash myself, and when I came back to my campsite it was destroyed. I thank God I took my weapons with me just in case that Augie I saw wanted a piece of me. The thing that destroyed my campsite left footprints bigger than any humans I've ever seen. It was definitely of humanoid origin. But how human really worried me. Usually humanoid creatures such as Bigfoot and the Sasquatch don't mess with humans unless you are in their territory. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't being territorial, it was trying to make an example. It looked to be more out of rage than to protect something you own. I pondered what it could, but eventually I gave up and sharpening my tomahawk in case the bastard came back. After the encounter, I made a makeshift camp out of some foliage and branches around the forest floor and started a campfire. I knew the bastard was waiting for me to go to sleep, so I spent all day prepping. I'm gonna be honest with you, in all my years of cryptid hunting, I've never seen anything like this. This was the night that made me a seasoned cryptid hunter fear for his life. After all day prepping, I was sitting at the campfire when I saw it. I've never seen anything like it. It was tall, about 8.5 feet. It looked human, but it is all wrong. It didn't look like a regular human. It looked like a cross between the ancient race of Gigantopithecus and an ancient human. Its burning amber eyes that flowed in the dark, looking at me with such hate and anger. I could feel the killing intent exhuming from its body. I hurried to my feet with my gun and tomahawk in hand, and it threw something at me that landed at my feet and smiled. I kicked it over with my foot to inspect it, and it was the fucking Skin Indian this thing had killed. Then Skin Indian, and threw its head at me as some sick display of power. I looked back up at it, and it was sadistically smiling at me. I've never felt so much fear in my life. I stood my ground waiting for it to make a move, and I noticed that it wasn't advancing anymore. I looked at the fire and then at it, and its expression fell. To this day, I don't know what that thing was, but I thank God that I had a big fire going. I took a seat, and it did the same at the forest's edge, and we stared at each other, me not letting the fire go out and it not willing to advance with the fire roaring. We stared at each other until the break of dawn, and then at the blink of an eye it was gone. Quickly I left that place and told my superiors what happened, and they told me that there were stories of the Nakani wild men of the valley of the Nahani, and that I was lucky to make it out of there alive. I never did find Saul. One day I will go back there, but until now I just thank God that I'm alive to tell the tale. I'd tell you more stories about my career, but I'll have to wrap it up here. I just got a call about going on a mission with some agents to investigate Skinwalker Ranch. If I make it back alive, I'll tell you the details about that hunt too. Until then, farewell and be safe. Out there, you never know what really lurks in the deep unexplored regions of this earth. Fourth story. This story was shared by you/user_identification Z. Walt Disney World Suit Rules and Protocols. I'm not good with storytelling, so I'll just hop right in. I work as a security guard at Walt Disney World, or as I call it, the most demonic place in the multiverse. I used to work in the police force, but got let go due to budget cuts. I loved working there, so I was pretty distraught about the whole thing. I thought if I worked at the happiest place in the world, I could recover. I know that's a shit reason, but downing 2 bottles of Jack Daniels does that. So I filled out an application and boom, I got the job. If I wasn't drunk as hell, I would not have made that mistake. When I got there, they escorted me through some underground tunnels to a pure white room with a table and 1 chair. They handed me a list and told me to read it and sign it. Here's that list. Hello, and welcome to your career at Walt Disney World, the happiest place on Earth. Below are the supernatural and unexplained intervention team, suits rules and protocols. Need to know items. Primary weapon. Pistol that looks like a prop to keep the magic, but fires microtrank darts. Secondary weapon. 12-gauge rock salt buckshot shotgun, not to be seen by guests unless there is a Class 4 emergency. Intercontainment division, entertainment plus containment, costumed suits that lead Class AF anomalies and cryptids into the tunnels below the park. They are costumed so everyone doesn't question it and thinks it's part of the magic. There are 3 tunnel systems. TA1. Escort distraught families and lost children through these to get to the family center without breaking the magic. Does not connect with other tunnel systems. TA2. Leads to interrogation chamber. Does not connect with other tunnel systems. TB. Anomaly/cryptid containment and locker rooms. This is offstage, so this is where all spare parts, replacements, tools, weapons, and abnormalities are kept. While all suits have their own primary weapon, the shotguns are grab one and go. The only rooms are the locker rooms. Do what you need and then get out fast. You won't enjoy encountering them down there. This system connects to TX. TX, a giant underground maze designed to keep IT out of sight. Only connections are feeding tubes in the transport elevator. We let IT out when the park is closed for experimentation. We feed IT, otherwise it will claw open the steel doors and wreak havoc on the open park. Connects to TB. 1. Keep your scanner on you at all times during your shift. If you see an animatronic or costumed actor that looks out of place, scan it. If a negative reading comes up, call in backup. If it makes hostile advances, trank it. 2. If you see a ring of mushrooms exceeding 5 feet in diameter, grab a bag of rune-inscribed rocks. Place 3 in center of ring. Don't look back for 5 seconds at minimum. If guests mention tiny Tinkerbells, use 6 runed rocks and take the guests to the interrogation chamber. 3. If you see weird markings anywhere, call intercontainment. They will send a Tinkerbell to sprinkle pixie dust/salt around the area. 4. If you happen to find a guest in TB, get them out as quickly as possible. They like fresh meat. 5. If someone complains about a fish-like creature in any of the water rides, discreetly pour cyanide into the water. Close ride for 1 hour. 6. If someone says anything about ghosts, spirits, or strange sounds, close the attraction and notify the chief. Do not enter unless we say. If the out of place is in the open, call intercontainment and be ready to provide backup. 7. If the music stops at all, radio in code 13Z. If it comes back and it's not the same song, then someone bit the dust in the control room. Get a shotgun and proceed to the control room. If the music does not return in 10 seconds, clear the park. 8. If any of the characters start talking in a very high or low pitch, call intercontainment. They will have a whole show planned to fool the guests in order to get the thing. 9. If any character faints, then they are employees in a costume. All employees need a 30-minute break for every 2 hours spent in 85F or higher. If the character becomes more lively in the heat, refer to Rule 1. 10. If anyone has a shirt that says Disney Security, you are authorized to throw them in TB and beat the shit out of them. Once incapacitated, throw into TX feeding tube. Run. 11. If one of the cryptids gets to a guest, trank the cryptid and call code 6H. This code locks down the section of the park in which you are in. Calmly walk to the nearest TB entrance. There are always amnesia gas grenades right by the concrete inner door. 12. No one whatsoever is to go to Old Discovery Island. That's where they come from, and they will kill anyone on sight. TB has a transport system that ships any cryptids back to that place. 13. If any of the characters start bleeding out of their eyes, call the chief. Run and yell at the guests to run. PR will handle the guests. 14. If any guest mentions a specific abnormality, take them to the interrogation chamber. The following is Siren Protocol. A. Siren 1. Audible only to security. Demon trap activated. Grab a shotgun if you aren't busy. B. Siren 2. Audible only to all staff. Exorcist is coming / exorcism ongoing. Distract guests with free stuff if need be. C. Siren 3. Audible to everyone. Class 4 emergency. This could be anything from a dirty bomb to severe abnormalities to outright evacuation. D. Siren 4. Audible to everyone. IT has escaped. IT will likely be on ground level, so getting a shotgun shouldn't be too hard. We also have a couple of SWAT divisions stationed here, so IT might be dealt with before you get a shotgun. However, your job is to deal with the class staff cryptids, not IT. And lastly, if there are 2 Mickeys out, radio in code 666, XC. This will result in Siren 4 sounding. Failure to abide will result in immediate disciplinary action. Signature. What the hell? I thought I got a security job, not wrangling demons. Then it hit me. I did this while I was drunk. Well, shit. Rather than say, hey, I was drunk when I did this, I just signed the stupid thing. Great. We'll start you out shadowing the chief for a couple weeks, then you're on your own. Any questions? Yeah. Where did these things come from in the first place? We don't really know. They first showed up after we closed down the Old Discovery Island. All we can do is protect the guests. We tried clearing the park long-term once, but it didn't go too well. We had to fish people's insides out of the lagoon when we found them. Oh, okay then. Those 3 weeks shadowing the chief really put my job in perspective. On the first day, I expected some gruff, feeding donuts, but the chief was actually a somewhat attractive woman. Of course, we were all business, and I learned real quick that this place is hell. On day 4, we had suit radio into the intercontainers that Donald Duck's voice suddenly got really low. The park has a plethora of cameras, so we found it pretty quick. I will never unhear that sound. I asked why the suit didn't use his scanner, but the chief said that DD was in a completely normal area, so the suit didn't suspect a thing. We only had 3 more experiences in those weeks. After that, I was on my own. I will never forget what happened on my first day alone. I was on patrol around the Space Mountain ride when this unholy screaming came from the ride. Now, we have to do our best to not break the magic, but this was pretty obvious, so we had to play it off. This 40-something guy tears out of the ride entrance and fucking sprints straight for the park exit. I played it off by saying, don't sniff pixie dust too much, kids, and then the chief called. Workman, my last name, please close the ride and investigate. Sure thing, ma'am. I closed it down and went inside. I used my flashlight to navigate, because the lights are complicated. I saw something in a corner. Sorry, sir, but this ride is what the FUCK. The something I thought was a person turned out to be Goofy with a maw of sharp teeth. Goofy had sharp teeth. A cartoon character had teeth made for eating meat. Yup, Eugia, said the abomination in the lowest, most demonic voice I have ever heard, worse than the time with Donald. Luckily, I knew what protocol was for this incident, but then I noticed something else. The cartoon character with a carnivore's teeth and Lucifer's voice was bleeding from its eyes. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the chief materializes with a shotgun and blasts that thing's face. There were more loud bangs, but they came from outside. Entertainment's out there right now distracting the guests. I would have left it to you, but sharp teeth is something we've never seen before, so I did what I could. Let's clear out so they can transport it back to the island. Hold up, I asked. Is it dead? Nope. These things don't die. They just reanimate. Oh, in which case let's move. Speaking of which, how'd you get here? I used the TB system, and that is what happened that day. I could probably write a whole novel about my 10+ years there. Well, geez, I didn't expect this to blow up to the point that it did. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed the post. I have a good amount of friends at this job, including but not limited to Comrade Igor. He and I are very close friends. He immigrated over here from Russia when he was 3, so he pretty much grew up here. We make jokes all the time like, "De comrade, when you strap minigun to dog, enemy not run because cute." He worked here for years before I showed up. The chief/Michaelia, Mac, she's really friendly and treats her underlings more like equals than bossing them around. She intentionally took the job of chief of security in order to protect people from these demons, because she knows what it's like being cornered by one of them. Legend has it that she is one of the few people to have seen IT. And I asked her, IT is not Walt himself, you/wolf_of_WV. IT is actually Mickey, or some twisted and foul manifestation of him. She believes that IT told Walt to build the park so IT had a good hunting ground, but there is no evidence, she just heard it. Steven is full of hate to these things. When he was visiting here at age 5, he saw his mom and dad get slaughtered by Minnie Mouse. Ever since, he's been making weapons to kill, not incapacitate the cryptids. He works under intercontainment, so his scimitars with pieces of the true cross and the blades don't raise concerns. He is amazing at swordsmanship. I've seen him take out 5 cryptids with one dagger, dipped in holy water, in less than 1 minute. Alright, let's get to some stories. The first one that comes to mind is the time that Igor almost killed a guest. Some kid had gotten lost while exiting the Small World ride. Igor was the closest, so he escorted her through TA1. Well, he meant to, anyway. The girl asked why Elsa was following them while they walked. Do you mean Anna? Elsa is sick, the actress was. This is Workman. All available suits come to redacted section. Code 6H, I repeat, Code 6H, multiple cryptids in section trying to lure kids. Grab a shotgun. Lock the park down. This is the chief. Thanks Workman for saying it for me. All suits listen to what he said. I'll be there in 2 minutes. Suits start to pour out of the TB system with weapons leveled at the creatures. The cryptids started to grab kids. Claws, fangs, etc. started to sprout from their bodies. They were using the kids as hostages. The kids went apeshit, crying, screaming, fainting, going catatonic. I was actually scared. Not for myself, but at the situation. If only the chief was here, she'd... Oh wait, she just arrived. Igor was driving a dune buggy with property of Walt Disney World on it. The chief was standing on the fucking roof with an AR-15. I guess we have those now. She addressed the things. Look, I don't know who or what you are, but if you don't let the kids go right now, then you will be in a shitload of pain. Drop them. They responded, as one. Mine, mine, mine. Oh, well that changes every open fire. All 80 suits in the area plus the chief started shooting these things, but the buckshot seemed to do nothing to them. Luckily, the kids weren't injured, but the demon characters would probably fix that. I caught something out of my eye. Steven was going berserk on these things. He had what looked like a machete in both of his hands, cutting them down in a whirlwind of steel. Eventually, the chief called a ceasefire so we didn't accidentally kill him. His holy weapons were the only thing that could incapacitate the vile beings. It took him about 10 minutes to down all of the creatures in the section, during which all of the suits were cheering him on. When the fight was over, the chief got on the intercom for the park. Attention park guests. Due to unforeseeable circumstances, the park is now closed. Please make your way to the front gate. That is all. To all the suits, she said, Workman, Adams, Stephen, and Lennon Igor, stay here. Everyone else, begin lockdown procedure A4. She hopped down from the dune buggy and walked over to the costumed actor playing Donald. Without hesitation, she dragged him off the ground and punched him across the face. Listen up, you fat cunt. I'm sorry that nobody told you about the demonic beings that roam here, but you just caused PR a giant-ass headache. If you would have fucking listened to me, then we could have got this whole thing under control, but instead, all of those kids have fucking PTSD. You are fired and blacklisted from this place. If you come back, then you will rehired as live bait. She then turned to the three of us. Igor, thanks for the ride. Josh, me, thanks for letting the other suits know what to do. Steven, I don't even know what to say. All three of your salaries just got a nice $1 million bump. Come over to Club 33 after the park closes. You guys deserve a special thanks/party. I'm typing this up right before I leave for that. I have some particularly good stories for next time. Alright, a lot has happened since the cryptic assault. First off, we are on a more organized schedule. There are 5 people in a team, and there are 50 teams. My team is me, Igor, Steven, new hire Kevin, and the badass/the chief. Kevin is pretty good to be around, although his humor is really dark. I don't blame him, given that the more an individual deals with weird shit, the darker their humor gets. He worked as a sniper in the army, but he became a suit because it pays more. My team works 8 to 8 o'clock with a lunch and dinner break. On Tuesday and Thursday nights, we provide sniper cover for the nightly experiments. Second off, we traded out the rock salt shotguns for AR-15s with holy oil-dipped black tip rounds. Third and final, we brought in a whole team to develop a gas that only affects the creatures to keep them at bay. During a Sunday night experiment, Team A forbailed, my team, Team A, won, split off for the sniper support. I went with Michaelia, still the chief, but it's after hours, so just call me Mac. We were ordered to set up camp close to the old Discovery Island. Look over by the main building on the island. Are those kids? Holy shit, yes they are. In radio, this is the chief. 2 kids spotted at the island. They seem to be 16 to 18 years old. Zooming in, they appear to have video cameras. My guess is that they are vloggers or just retards. Can we get an evac team in there? This is Control. Sorry, can't send a team out as Walt, nickname for Demon Mickey, is particularly difficult today. Shoot a couple shots and defend if need be, but don't waste ammo. They didn't read the signs, not your problem. Okay, we'll do what we can. Josh, see any demon things or near them? They look like boys from up here. Possible Snow White coming for them. It stopped and appears to be hurt. What? I think it's trying to lure them in. That makes some sense, but why would it do that unless found a Gaston stalking them? It's a double attack. I'll get Gaston while you get Snow. Should we fire off a couple of warning shots first? Sure. Okay, bang, 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 bang. The 2 asshats shined a flashlight in our general direction, but they couldn't see us. They just shrugged it off. Idiots. The cryptids seemed to be moving faster towards them. Okay, let's engage. I got Snow. Bang. Immediately it dropped to the ground. Mac dropped her target. This is the chief. Targets have taken care of. Trespassers have star OHSHID. A pack of Plutos is converging on them. Mac seemed to pause for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was hollow and sad. Josh, we have to take out the kids. We can't kill all of those things, but we can dash. Yeah, I know. 3, 2, 1. Now. Bang. Bang. Control, this is right. Workman and I are done. While I wish to say that was the end of it, it wasn't. It seems that we were being tormented by some ghost or demon. We would see packs of ghost Plutos just running, or the teens dropping out of nowhere. Nobody could see the anomalies but us. It was almost like the chief and I were being mocked. On Monday, 9 a.m., I was in a black polo while the rest of my team was incognito. This parent and her daughter run up to me crying. The kid was mumbling about something in Small World, something about unnatural arms and legs. Steven showed up and took them to interrogation. The rest of my team went inside the ride. We got a car all to ourselves in order to investigate. Looking back, we should have grabbed weapons first. Nothing eventful happened until we got to the Hawaiian part. Then the ride just stopped. And we sat there. Nothing happened again, but we could all feel this white-hot rage and hatred slowly building in the place. Our radios all went off at the same time, but it seemed off. It sounded like static, but slowly a child screaming in agonizing pain and horror was audible. It slowly got louder to the point where we, a group of professionals, were pressing our hands to get rid of that noise. Gosh, it was so loud. This torture lasted, well, we lost track of time, but it seemed like a couple of hours. It suddenly stopped, the silence almost too loud after the screaming. Me, Kevin, and Igor were all crying, but Mac was just straight catatonic. We followed her gaze. I wish I hadn't. It was a humanoid, but it was pitch black. It seemed like it was walking towards us from 40 feet away. It had arms and legs too long to be anatomically correct. That wasn't the worst part. These demon dog creatures were following it in a twitchy way. The other two went ape, calling in on the radio, but I joined Mac in that stare towards the thing. This next part is really hard to talk about to anyone but Mac. The thing split into two human figures that looked like teenage boys. I almost fainted. Suddenly, it merged back into one form. It took an impossibly long step and stopped outside the fucking boat. It let out the same noise on our radios. I screamed for Igor and Kevin to run while I got Mac, still catatonic. We hauled ass like nobody's business till we were outside of the entrance. We all just broke down, sobbing, hugging each other for like 10 minutes. I thought, oh shit, we broke the magic, but was puzzled to see 5 teams of suits surrounding us. Some blonde chick I didn't know spoke up. You guys have been in there for about 24 hours. That's all I remember before blacking out. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed with my team staring at me. We didn't talk, just exchanged looks. After I was discharged, Mac walked up to me. Hello, I was wondering if you would like to come to my place for a bit. I really need human company right now. Yeah, sure. I need human company too. Someone to joke with would be nice. Before I go on, I would like to mention that you/Vaxra helped me a lot with this story, as he's very good with details. He helped me type it up while I was on break. I think the park has a crisis situation on its hands. It's getting closer to Halloween, and while that may sound cliché, it has undoubtedly led to increased activity in the park. More Mickeys have been spotted. 2 suits have been targeted personally to the point where they are unable to work. More strange anomalies have been detected, and a lot of guests are mentioning that they are feeling watched. An unavoidable increase in missing people have been reported, from Small World, fuck that demonic bullshit, to Dinosaur to that Peter Pan ride. The Peter Pan ride seems particularly malevolent, as it's going after private investigators specifically. I met one of these investigators, you/Vaxra, who commented on one of my posts about needing help. Steven and I had some free time off, so being suits, we went into the park after hours for a cryptid hunting spree. He had his scimitars, and I borrowed his machetes for the hunt, and we both had AR-15 strapped to our back. Now, we can't actually kill them due to some unholy trait, but we can damn well incapacitate them. We were running back to the entrance when we saw something weird. A Mickey. We froze. Everything about this was wrong. Its smile was too wide, with black, bottomless pits as an excuse for eyes. Its ears were shredded in places, and its arms and legs were stretched to unreal proportions. The words it said to me sent shivers through my body, like my ears wanted to shrivel up and die at the sound of its voice. Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Come inside, you'll have fun inside. And with a snap of its neck, it disappeared, only a white and black photograph in its place. Stephen was the first to snap out of his stupor, shakily walking over to where the cryptid was and picking up the photograph. What was in the picture turned his face ghost white. "Stephen, what is it?" He handed me the photo, and I immediately radioed in for backup. It showed a male in the center of a satanic circle, surrounded by what looked like dismembered Mickey animatronics and bones. The most horrifying thing? He was smiling at the camera. Almost half an hour later, we had arrived at Old Discover Island. We had identified the cavern from his comment on Part 4 as somewhere under the lake, and lo and behold, there was hole leading under lake, with only a sign to mark the entrance. Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. That circle turned out to be Mickey surrounding a calmly-looking Vaxra, with his hands clutched together holding who know what. We've had a couple of bait situations before, so we thought it was a ruse. That and this dude was smiling in the picture, so it was safe to assume that he was the bait. What do you think, Stephen? Should we go ARs or blades? Vaxra looked up at us, confused for a moment. Then he realized what we were saying. Let's go ARs. He spoke up. I'm not the one you should be focused on. There are demons in your face. Shoot them. Stephen wasn't having it. Nice try, bitch. But a talking cryptid is still a cryptid. I'm not a cryptid. I'm investigating a family's disappearance on your Peter Pan ride. Right. Josh, let's get this fool. 3, 2, 1 dash. Would a cryptid have this? He unclasped his hands and showed us a glowing crucifix, a now dimming crucifix, as it was. We were going to enter the circle when we realized he was telling the truth, but then he froze, a look of sudden terror on his face. One of the Mickey heads chuckled and rasped, just walk away, and he lives. Make one move, and he dies. Wouldn't want that to happen now, would you? Parts of all the animatronics flew up from the ground, assembling themselves into a dozen rusty Mickeys, all eyes on us. I looked at Stephen, concerned, having encountered very few hostage situations. Igor radioed in, "I got this," and then dropped 4 of them in quick succession from behind us. He tried to shoot the others, but they simply melted into shadows and reformed behind Vaxra. Ribs burst from the stomach of the Mickey right behind him, and we thought he was over. Suddenly, he broke through the ribs and leaped behind us. He whipped out a fan with runic symbols and threw it at the Mickey, which crumpled and broke on contact. At this point, there were 3 Mickeys coming from the right to try to get us, and we were shooting at them with no luck, as they kept melting and reforming to avoid our bullets. Stephen got 2 lucky shots on 2 separate cryptids, and they crumpled to the ground. With 2 gunmen trained on one cryptid, it had no chance. When we were done with our side, we turned to Vaxra's side, and to our complete astonishment, he had eliminated 4 of his, only having 1 left. He was speaking to his cryptid in growling tones, crucifix in one hand and fan in the other. "You thought you could end my life here? In this accursed, unholy place." The cryptid was backing away slowly, but at the same time, shooting dark shots of oil at Vaxra. He was shielding himself with his cross, and shot arched rays of purple energy at the cryptid. Hey, we can have some fun. Just put down your fan and put down your cross, and we'll eat Kandiska dash. It never finished its sentence, as Vaxra's fan split into multiple blades, surrounded the cryptid, and pierced it from all sides. He then whispered something, and gold light engulfed the carcass, with nothing in its place. Me and Stephen looked at each other and put guns to Vaxra's head. "You're coming with us." Half an hour later, we were in the interrogation room with Vaxra strapped to a chair. I got to ask the questions. Who are you? Who are your clients? What were you doing in the park after hours? Did you see anything? Will you open your mouth and say something? The whole time he was just staring at us with an amused smile playing on his lips. The smile didn't disappear when his lips kissed my fist. He finally opened his mouth to speak. Names are a powerful thing, sir. But as you've saved my life, you can call me Alex. The names I cannot tell you, though, are my clients. I respect their privacy and their safety, along with the expensive annual passes they have to your park. I couldn't stop a small smirk from coming across my face, as quick as it was. I wasn't trespassing in the park after hours, suspicious as though it may seem. I was riding the Peter Pan ride, and blacked out just as we were flying over London. The missing family was on that ride, specifically in that mini London you know. It looks like they've fallen from a great height. Wendy's hands have almost unnoticeable bloodstains on her hands. A rustling of paper and pencil came from behind me as Stephen wrote down notes. Thank you, we'll look into that. How are you able to do that? Stuff with your crucifix. We've had cardinals in here before, and they have never come close to being able to do that. Some things I am required to keep confidential. Just know that you and me, we fight on the same side. Okay, I can respect that. Are there any other supernatural anomalies you wish to tell us about? Yes. Small world has many, is he all right? My partner had just grabbed the table and was shaking. PTSD. My team has had experiences on that damnable creation. Understandable. Alex had a strangely blank face as Stephen was shaking, but turned back to me and continued. Small world attracts too much creatures, and with rumors flying around of dolls being creepy already, I think it's safe to say that this ride is out of order for now. Peter Pan has something against private investigators and families alike, so that should be taken care of. Lastly, one of the few really bad ones. Adventureland. There's something in there. There's a yellow door that appears in random intervals, and whatever's in there isn't meant to be let out. I can feel a force pushing me back when I get within 5 feet from that door. Do you know what's in it? Stephen had stopped shaking and slumped to the floor, the momentary PTSD flashback taking energy out of him. Unfortunately, we don't know that's in there. Seeing the expertise you've had in this specific field, Walt Disney World gives you full access to the park after hours. To be clear, you'll be warned when we let out a certain Mickey out at night for experimentation. Don't let IT catch you. I got sudden chills as Alex's face lit up with the same smile he had in the picture. I think we both know very well that you know what's behind that door. Some things are required to be kept confidential, sir, and I believe your time here is done. The chief will escort you out. As the chief escorted him out, Alex accidentally bumped into me, and his mouth uttered 3 words. That's not Stephen. 5th story. This story was shared by you/subject errors. I downloaded a cryptid soundboard. A piece of me wishes I hadn't. It was a Saturday night, and my best friend Hazel and I were bored. Being poor teens in a small town, we scraped up some change from around our houses. Told our parents we were going to do our homework and headed to the nearest 24-hour fast food place with Wi-Fi. We got 2 small sodas and tucked into the comfy seats in a back corner booth no one touched. Bam, all the drinks and YouTube videos you could want, and a burger each for $4. In, mostly quarters. Like most nights, we took out our smartphones, plugged in our headphones, and sat there occasionally switching headphone jacks to show each other a particularly funny or weird video. We couldn't send them to each other, we didn't have service. Our parents gave us their old smartphones because any phone can still call 911 with or without service. Hazel's had a big crack across the screen. My camera does not work. We made do. On this night in particular, I was bored. Nowadays, boredom is a state of mind. It no longer means there's a lack of stimulation. It means despite all the things in front of me, ain't a one sparked my interest. On nights like that, I browsed the free section of the App Store. Oh, miss, and over here bored again, miss, and was short for misanthrope. It was the way she teased me when I was in one of those moods. Hazel had this uncanny ability to never be bored. She was always down for anything. Actually, that's probably why she's my friend. My boredom leads me to strange places and she's always down for the ride. She bat her eyes expecting a witty response, but it just stuck my tongue out at her and locked eyes while I continued to flick all the way down to the bottom of the page. Cryptid soundboard. I clicked on it. The description read, "Ever wondered what a Bigfoot sounds like? How about the difference between a wolf howl and a werewolf? Caution. Some sounds can have side effects." The side effects were written very small and I didn't bother with them because I figured it was a joke. It did, however, have good reviews, so maybe it was at least a funny joke. I downloaded the app while Hazel showed me a funny reaction video she had watched. The app started up with a small ding. I hadn't expected it, but it had a blurry photo of a Bigfoot. I clicked it. A short human-like yell played. I rolled my eyes. That was boring. I clicked back and scrolled down to a picture of a chimera. I clicked it. The clip hissed and growled and bleated at the same time, like the three animals had all just been thrown in a cage together. I scrolled forward, almost giving up when the promised side-by-side were wolf/wolf howl clips were. I laughed and Hazel shot me a curious glance. I held up my pointer finger asking her to wait a second. The first howl I had heard before, but the second was more sing-song, mimicking a wolf sound with a human one layered on top. There was an eerie tone to it and crickets in the background of both, as if they were actually captured in the wild. I showed the app to Hazel and she plugged in, also laughing at the idea. We went through a few more. At first they were cute. The childlike laughter and singing of pixies. The neighing and wet whinny of kelpies. The whir of the Mothman. None of it could be real, but it was a fun concept and had definitely shaken my boredom. The first one to rub me the wrong way was La Llorona. The picture was a woman, her head in her hands. The clip was a woman half screaming, half sobbing, but it was the whipping sound of the grass, as if the person recording was running away, that creeped me out. The Jersey Devil sounded like a bunch of pigeons, if only they clucked at the exact same time. The Loch Ness Monster sounded like a drowning cow. The Chupacabra made me jump out of my skin. It wasn't just the sound of the creature guttural and otherworldly, it was the savage screams of the goat he was devouring. "Wow," I said after I showed it to Hazel. "It's like maybe this is real. Like this person went around hunting down monsters just to record them." "Yeah, isn't that exciting?" she said. "No way you're still bored." "No, but what?" She was getting annoyed with me. "But that means they are real," I said. She shrugged. "We live in the middle of nowhere. It's not like any of them are around here." I blinked slowly, trying to decide if it was worth arguing. Most of these things are supposedly found anywhere. "Besides, it isn't real," she laughed and scrolled down again. Angel was the next one. A picture of a cute but generic angel popped up. There was the caution symbol again, and I realized too late Hazel hadn't read the disclaimer. Hazel clicked, and in my right ear I heard the perfect voice. It sounded like the most beautiful singing I had ever heard, but I think it was only a single word. Then my ear started ringing. Hazel turned to me, yanking the headphones out of my ear with a pop of blood across the table. I looked at her to see a thin line of blood rolling out of her ear, and from the warm sensation I guessed I mirrored her. "We told our parents, who told the cops, but when we went to show them the app, it was gone. The doctors say my right ear and her left may never regain hearing, and they are unsure what could have done the damage. All I know is with my good ear I listen out for those creatures I now know exist, and if you ever meet an angel, cover your ears." Sixth story. This story was shared by you/Drawable26. Sometimes at night I hear whistling in the woods. I'm what most people refer to as a mountain man. You know, living off the land and working with my bare hands kinda stuff. I know, big shocker, the wild men have access to technology. Well, we're not cavemen, just people who enjoy living in the wilderness. I was always one of those people, until recently anyways. I lived in a small log cabin, cozy enough for a 34-year-old man with a strange interest in carving and wood chopping. Now I wasn't completely out in the wilderness. There was a small town about 7 miles away, but still secluded enough to feel the peace and tranquility of living in nature, not to mention secluded enough to be completely alone. Anyways, one night after finishing putting the chicken and roosters away, I sat on my porch enjoying the stars and moon. As I sat while I lit my pipe, I heard this strange sound, almost like a mix of a bird cooing and a chirping grasshopper. Seeing as how I was the only home for miles, I chalked it up to animals. I mean, what else could it be, right? As strange as the sound was, it was also kind of soothing. After listening for a moment, the whistling stopped quite abruptly. It was strange. The moment the whistling ended, so did the rest of the world's sounds. I couldn't hear the wind blowing or the running stream out back. It was as if someone had hit the mute button on my property. It was so quiet that I could have easily mistaken my breathing for a wailing beast. But just as I was about to question my sanity, suddenly the sounds of the nature returned. I put my pipe out and made my way back inside. After making myself a nice hearty meal you'd expect a wild man to eat, lots of meat, along with a nice hefty glass of bourbon, I began cleaning my kitchen, and as I was about to wrap the leftovers, the cuckoo clock above my stove began, well, cooing. Now that doesn't sound like anything crazy, but the thing is that clock has been busted for years. It's been nothing more than a wall decoration. And as I thought, the clock was still broken. In fact, it wasn't even cooing. It was that whistle I had heard moments before my dinner. And once again as it ended, for a few moments so did my hearing. I chalked it up to a long day of labor, so I decided I'd hit the hay, and that's when things got weird. As I awoke and prepared myself for another day of hard work, I noticed something. The dinner from last night, the one I never got to finish wrapping, was completely gone off the plate. I tried to reason with myself that maybe I had finished it, but yet the plate and saran wrap were both sitting out there on the counter. See, I'm not normally a superstitious person, so I again reasoned with myself that I had finished it before having the chance to wrap it. After all, that glass of bourbon was pretty large, so I brushed it off and went on my day. I went and let out my poultry for feeding when I saw, well, a pretty fucked up sight. My chickens had been completely butchered. It wasn't the fact my chickens were dead that made me unsettled. I mean, I've lost plenty of them to wild animals looking for something to eat. But that's the thing. None of my chickens had any signs of being eaten of any kind. They were all mutilated. Some were impaled along the picket fence used to keep them in, and not neatly. No, they were so torn up and mutilated that the shiny white would have been dyed with the red crimson blood of my poor birds. 2 of them were completely hollowed out. No bones, no organs, no muscle tissue. It was no more than an empty sack of chicken skin. Whatever did this wasn't looking for a meal. It was in it for the thrill of the hunt. After that, I decided some precautions needed to be taken, so I took a trip down to town. Luckily for me, a technical store was open not too long ago, so I decided I'd purchase some security cameras. "Hey, you're that wild forest dude who lives in the woods, right?" the young clerk asked as he rang up my items. He had to be no more than 18, the classic, old enough to grow facial hair, but not enough to grow a full beard look. Grungy hippie clothes, and he gave off a strong aroma of purple haze and pineapple express. Reminds me of when me and my brother would grow pot in our backyard in high school. Despite being a goofy high schooler, he was a good kid, had a very love not war vibe to him. I let out a laugh as I reached for my wallet. Didn't know I had that much of a reputation. He returned my laughter and quickly replied, "Dude, you're a legend around school. Everyone out here is too formal, you feel me? You though, living off the land, doing things with your own 2 hands, shit's fucking hardcore, bro," he exclaimed, almost as if fanboying over me. I looked at his shiny name tag, which read Spliffy. I chuckled at the nickname. I proceeded to complete my transaction when he asked me, "What's with all the tech then?" I paused for a moment, leading to him continuing his question. "My man, you've been living the frontier life since I was in pre-K. Why the sudden change up?" "Been hearing some noises from the woods, not like anything I've heard before. Messed up some of my birds pretty bad," I said as I handed the boy my credit card. "So just some weird sounds then," he continued, running my card through the scanner. After a brief pause, I decided to mention the strange anomaly of the world going mute. "Well, It's not exactly a strange noise, just a whistle, but for some reason every time the whistling stopped, I can't hear anything but my breathe. When I said that, Spliffy got rather concerned. "Dude, you're dealing with a woodstocker." I raised my eyebrow. "A what?" He got eager, no doubt ready to tell me of what I could only assume was a cryptid, which of course he did. A woodstocker, or a tree skin prowler as it's known in Indian folklore. It's believed that they were said to be the great omen for forest and woodlands areas. I looked at the boy before beginning to ask my own questions. I tried to convince myself that I was simply indulging his tale, but deep down a part of me believed it could be what I was dealing with. "So then what's with the whistling?" he continued as he began bagging my items. "Well, according to the Native Americans, whenever hunters or gatherers would go for an expedition and never returned, it was followed by a long whistle, which was then followed by complete silence. The Indian tried connecting the dots, and they came to the conclusion that the whistle would come either right before or after disposing a victim. Well, I'll keep a lookout for walking trees then. I laughed as I placed my card back in my wallet and grabbing my items. "Yeah man, good luck. You're really gonna need it," he said rather seriously. I left and entered my truck, the whole ride debating this woodstocker, then my sanity for even entertaining the idea. I arrived home and got to work on setting up the cameras, making sure to put an extra behind the house towards the woods. The rest of the day went completely fine, assuming I had scared off whatever creature was around, so I enjoyed a nice meal and a tall glass of ale. It wasn't until later it all went wrong. I awoke to the sound of my dog Corda's barking violently, once again followed by the now disturbing whistles and its preceding silence. I instantly ran to my camera monitors and witnessed the strangest thing. Curtis had been sitting at the edge of the tree lines, just sitting there, for 3 hours. It wasn't until I saw a large rustle around in the woods that he started barking, then running into the woods. I ran to my room, grabbing my rifle along with a box of shells, and rushing to the door. Curtis was the only family I had, and I'd be damned if I let some tree monster take him. I bursted open the back door, damn nearing busting it off its hinges, and made a break to the woods. After about 10 minutes, the whistle returned, louder than ever before. Despite the following silence, I could still see the bushes tussling in front of me. I quickly raised my rifle, slowly releasing the safety, and out came Curtis. I took a quick sigh of relief and went to pet him. However, he just kept running back to the house. Before I could follow, I heard another wailing, but it wasn't any animal or monster. It was a human cry. I quickly rushed to the sound as quick as possible. Might be a monster out here, but I'm not letting anyone die on my property. The screaming got louder and louder till I finally reached the source. It was the kid from the electronics store. He had been completely mutilated. His chest was caved in, his legs were broken to hell, looked like a graph, and his left forearm had been laying on the right side of his body. I rushed over to the kid, kneeling down to comfort him. Let's be honest, there was no way he was making it out of these woods alive. "Jesus Christ, kid, what are you doing out here? You know what was out here," he wheezed, coughing up thick red blood. "Wanted to help," he said between blood-gargled coughs. He reached up with his one still attached arm and grabbed my collar, pulling me closer to him. "You need to run," he whimpered, just in time for me to hear before the haunting whistle came, directly behind me. I turned around, quickly stumbling back as I came face to face with it. The thing looked like something straight out of a J.R.R. Tolkien novel, broken twigs and branches twisted to make the form of the creature's body, its cracked, jagged bark seeming to form some kind of scales or armor, or something. The most disturbing part was its face, the same one I was looking down to as it was telling me to run. And no, this isn't some Leatherface/Ed Gein situation. The thing didn't steal the kid's face, more like copying it. It had been carved into some sort of tribal mask, and it was disturbingly accurate. You could see the pain and suffering on the boy's wooden face. I was stuck on my ass, paralyzed from fear as this thing slowly limbered towards me, snapping wood echoing through the woods with each motion. As I slowly began to push myself away from the creature, I was reminded I wasn't completely screwed, as I felt my palm brush against my rifle. I quickly scooped it up, aiming for the beast, and fired. It recoiled, letting out a hiss of pain. Seeing as it actually had an effect, I continued to fill it with buckshot, till there was a pile of empty shells at my feet. Not wanting to test fate, I balled my ass back home and fortifying it to the nines. The next morning, I had called the police about the boy's body. When I brought them to the location of the body, which was still there, but not the creature's, not even a branch left behind. They chalked it up to a rather gruesome bear attack. Wasn't he gonna argue them on it? What would have happened if I told her the truth anyways? Probably would have been put behind bars or in a padded wall. I have moved to the city since then, a decent apartment on a real high floor and far from any forest. That thing is still out there, and I have a feeling it's never left my trail to begin with. 7th story. This story was shared by you/HLLBLzer310. The creature on New Year's Eve. So, I had a very strange thing occur late in the evening, or early in the morning if you prefer, on New Year's Eve. I had been out at a party drinking and smoking a bit, as is customary. At around 2:30 a.m. few friends, I'll use nicknames for them, Mads, and Max, and I left the party we were at and headed back to our town. We had kept the roach of a blunt from the party, and we decided to pull into the resident parking lot outside the condo complex I live in to finish it off. Not 2 minutes after we spark it, a man comes stumbling up the road that runs through the parking area. This road, for reference's sake, runs through the parking area and down a hill to a few houses. I know pretty much all the people who live down that small hill. The man didn't really perturb me or my friends, so we kept smoking. Then a minute later, a high school girl wearing no shoes or socks and just a short, skimpy dress comes walking up the hill. At this point, I was starting to wonder what kind of weird party was going on at one of my neighbors' houses. The girl walked through the parking area without a word and then turned onto the main street and headed up it. At first, we assumed we wouldn't bother worrying because, despite her lack of shoes, she was walking straight and seemed to be keeping to herself. That's when things got strange. After she had disappeared from sight up the street, she came bolting back down as fast as she could given her shoeless situation. When she reached my friends and I, she slowed down, but looked very spooked. Mads asked her what had happened, and she stepped away from her at first. Then, with horror-stricken eyes, she pointed up to the main street. We all turned and looked, but there was nothing in our direct line of sight. Max and I decided we'd go up the street to investigate what was scaring this girl so much. We made sure the Mads and the girl got in this car, as she was the designated driver of the evening, and lock it. Max and I went up the main street, and for 5 minutes we saw nothing. Then we passed under the one street light on the upper portion of the street. This street light has a stubborn and nerve-wracking tendency to turn off at night once you pass under it. To my dismay, it turned off, leaving us in total darkness save for the faint glow of a light at the end of someone's driveway. This light was very low to the ground. That's when we saw it. Something that looked like a naked person but wasn't quite human waddled down the street toward us. It moved as though it were half squatting, and because of this, its hands dragged along the ground as they hung limp at its sides. I couldn't make out its face, and Max told me later that he couldn't either. It was also making a throaty gurgling noise, as if it was almost choking on something. All we could do in the moment was turn and run as fast as we could back down the street. I ran right into my house and Max ran to his car. I could hear the car screeching out of the parking area. I locked the door and didn't even bother to look outside to see if the thing was still coming down the street. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comments section, and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm. Welcome to Horror in Detail. Are you ready to embark on a chilling journey into the realms of darkness? The mysterious and the bone-chilling world of horror stories. On this channel, we are dedicated to unraveling the most terrifying tales that will send shivers down your spine. First story. Title: Frozen Whispers. The air was thick with tension as a group of friends embarked on a camping trip deep into the heart of the Alaskan wilderness. Excitement and laughter echoed through the dense forest as they set up their tents near the edge of a crystal-clear lake. Little did they know, an ancient evil lurked in the shadows, waiting to unleash its icy grip on their souls. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the temperature plummeted, and an unnatural chill settled over the campsite. The crackling of the campfire couldn't drown out the eerie silence that surrounded them. An unease settled in the air, and the friends exchanged nervous glances. That night, as they huddled in their tents, strange sounds echoed through the woods. Twigs snapped, and the wind carried whispers that seemed to dance on the edge of human understanding. The bravest among them, Mark, decided to investigate, armed only with a flashlight and his curiosity. Venturing into the darkness, Mark felt an otherworldly presence closing in. The trees seemed to twist and contort, casting long, shadowy fingers that reached for him. The air grew colder with every step, and he could see his breath in the frosty night. Suddenly, the whispers intensified, forming words that echoed in his mind. "Hungry," they hissed, sending shivers down his spine. Mark's heart raced as he stumbled upon an ancient totem, adorned with grotesque carvings depicting a creature with antlers and sunken, malevolent eyes. He recoiled in horror, realizing the legends were true. A Wendigo, a spirit cursed by cannibalism, haunted these woods. Ignoring the warning signs, Mark hurried back to the camp, desperate to share his discovery. But the others dismissed his tale as a mere campfire story, unwilling to believe in the supernatural. As the night wore on, the temperature plummeted further. Strange footprints appeared in the snow around the camp, leading to a growing sense of dread. The friends huddled together, their breath visible in the frigid air. The once warm and welcoming campfire struggled against the encroaching cold. Whispers echoed through the darkness, and the friends heard their names carried on the icy wind. Paranoia set in, turning friend against friend. Shadows danced at the edges of their vision, and the forest seemed to come alive with malevolence. One by one, the friends disappeared into the night, drawn away by an unseen force. Panic consumed the remaining few as they realized the Wendigo was picking them off, one soul at a time. Each disappearance left behind a chilling void, as if the forest itself hungered for their essence. In a final desperate attempt to escape, the survivors decided to flee the cursed campsite. As they stumbled through the snow-covered terrain, the Wendigo's haunting whispers followed them, promising a fate worse than death. Exhausted and on the brink of madness, they stumbled upon an ancient burial ground, marked by weathered stones and eerie symbols. It became clear that the Wendigo was tied to the land, its curse deeply rooted in the forgotten past. The survivors faced a choice: confront the malevolent spirit or succumb to the frozen abyss closing in around them. Summoning every ounce of courage, they performed a desperate ritual, using the ancient stones to create a barrier against the Wendigo's insidious influence. As they chanted ancient incantations, the air crackled with energy, and the forest itself seemed to recoil. The whispers faded, and the temperature gradually rose, dispelling the bone-chilling cold. With the curse broken, the survivors emerged from the woods, scarred by the horrors they witnessed. The Wendigo's haunting whispers lingered in their memories, a chilling reminder of the thin veil between the natural and supernatural worlds. The friends vowed never to speak of that night again, but the frozen whispers of the Wendigo would forever echo in the depths of their nightmares. Second story. This story was shared by you/non_Luna. My terrifying encounter with a Canadian legend. Spoiler alert, it's not just a legend. Growing up in the remote wilderness of northern Canada, I always heard stories of the Wendigo. My grandfather told me tales of a creature so terrifying that even the bravest of men trembled at the mere mention of its name. But I never truly believed in the legend until one dark, snowy night. The whistling started faintly at first, like a haunting tune carried on the frigid wind. but it grew louder and more insistent, like it was calling out to me personally. I tried to ignore it and kept hiking, but the whistling persisted, creeping closer and closer until I couldn't ignore it any longer. I peered into the darkness beside me and saw a figure standing in the woods. It was tall and thin, with skin stretched tightly over its bones, and its eyes glowed gray with a fierce hunger. I knew instantly what it was, the Wendigo. The instant I noticed it in the woods, it stopped whistling for a moment and twisted its head like it was intrigued that I had given in to its call. It began to whistle again, a melody so haunting that it seemed to penetrate my very soul. It was like it was trying to hypnotize me, to lure me into the woods where it could claim me for its own. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move as it began to creep closer and closer. Its claws and teeth gleamed in the moonlight, and I knew that if it reached me, it would be the end. I turned to continue hiking. I just needed to get back to my cabin, I told myself. But then, it started snarling. The whistling faltered for just a moment as I heard its footsteps thumping through the woods. I grabbed the knife my grandfather gave me as a boy from my bag, ready to strike. When my grandfather gave me this knife, he told me to always keep it close because it might just save my life one day. As soon as I heard the Wendigo break through the tree line, I threw it with all my might. It hit the creature square in the chest, and it let out a blood-curdling scream. It writhed in agony as I watched, frozen with terror. But then, to my horror, it began to change. Its skin began to peel away in strips, revealing a twisted and gnarled form underneath. Its limbs elongated and twisted into new shapes, its jaws unhinged to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. It was transforming into something even more monstrous than before. I turned and ran as fast as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear the Wendigo behind me, its ragged breaths and pounding footsteps echoing through the trees. I struggled with all my might to get away, my feet slipping and sliding on the snow and ice. Just as I thought I wouldn't be able to escape, I heard a branch snap behind me. I didn't dare look back, but I felt in my stomach that the creature was still close behind. I pushed myself harder, running as fast as I could. I could see the lights of my cabin in the distance, a beacon of safety in the darkness. With a final burst of adrenaline, I threw myself through the door of my cabin and slammed it shut behind me. I leaned against the door, gasping for breath and shaking with fear. I could hear the Wendigo outside, snarling and whistling. But my grandfather always told me they couldn't come inside as long as I kept the door locked. I stayed there for what felt like hours, too scared to move. But eventually, the snarling and whistling stopped, and I knew that the creature had moved on. I didn't manage to sleep that night, but hours after the sun came up, I carefully opened the door and went back outside and into the woods. I followed my own footsteps in the snow. The Wendigo's nowhere to be seen, as if it hadn't been stomping into the ground with what sounded like an earth-shattering force. About halfway to where I thought I had first seen the Wendigo, I found a tree, mangled, split in half, and laid out diagonally across the path. I realized this tree was how I was able to get away. Then I thought back to what my grandfather said about the knife. Maybe the knife made the tree get in the way. Maybe not. Either way, I never forgot that night. For years after that night, I lived in constant fear of the Wendigo's return. Every time the wind whistled through the trees, or a stray twig snapped in the woods, I would freeze, waiting for the sound of that haunting melody. Third story. This story was shared by you/Fisherman Tales. The Man in the Woods. The cabin was small and hidden deep within the woods, far from any road. It had a wood shingle exterior, one door, one curtain window, and a metal stovepipe sticking out from the roof. Along the side was a rack of logs and a stump with an axe stuck in it. On the other side was a line for hanging clothes. Think it's abandoned? I whispered. Justin shook his head. Nature ain't taken it yet. What do you mean? You ain't ever noticed that when people leave a place, nature moves in? All those plants in green that show up. Oh, yeah, like the old church. Just like that. And it don't take long, neither. Why does nature wait for people to leave? It don't wait, Cole. Nature's always trying to take over, but people won't let it. It's like a war or an invasion, one that never ends. Nature was here first, though. So, that means we're the invaders. We ain't been given a choice. Well, we could at least be nicer. Justin was quiet for a moment, then said, "Let's get a closer look at that house." We crept through crunching leaves, stopping every few steps to listen, then continued forward until we reached the side of the house. "What if they have a gun?" I asked. "Everyone has a gun out here." "Yeah, but what if they use it on us? We're just kids. They ain't gonna shoot a couple of kids. People have killed kids before. You worry too much. If they pull a gun on us, we'll run. Ain't nobody faster than us. We ain't faster than bullets." Justin peeked around to the front of the cabin and said, "I'm gonna try the door." "Wait. Keep an eye out." Before I could say no, Justin rounded the corner and was at the door. I watched the surrounding woods for movement. With each passing second, I felt as if the homeowner was coming closer, but I was too anxious to tell if nothing was moving or if everything was. It was as if some invisible force were charging toward us. "Cole," Justin whispered, startling me. He was peeking around the corner, waving me over. "It's unlocked." I hurried to him, and we stepped through the open door into a small, tidy space. There was a neatly made twin-sized bed and a deerskin rug spread across the wooden floor. On the right side of the room was a wood stove with a pot on top, with a shelf above it that held various jarred herbs and spices. On the left of the room was a bookshelf holding about a dozen books, and next to that a wooden chest. "Wow," I said. "This is awesome. Let's see what's in that chest," Justin said, and knelt and opened it. He rummaged through, pulling out various clothes until it was empty. "Nothing good." "Check out these books," I said. Justin closed the chest, then looked over my shoulder as I pulled out books on gardening, hunting, bushcraft, and taxidermy. "What's this one?" Justin said, reaching past to grab a book with a blank leather cover. "Is it a Bible?" "It's my journal," a deep voice announced from behind us, startling us against the bookshelf, causing several books to get knocked over onto the floor. The man was tall and looked to be in his mid-40s. He was clean-shaven and didn't look much like the sort of person you'd expect to find living hidden in the woods. "Sorry," Justin said and held out the journal, and as he did so, a photograph of a young boy fell out. The man reached down and picked it up, looked at it for a moment, then took the journal from Justin and placed the photo inside. "My son," the man said. He stepped toward us, and we moved out of the way as he placed the journal back onto the shelf, then knelt to pick up the rest of the books. "Sorry, sir," I said, and helped him pick up the books. Justin did the same, then the man took the books from us and returned them to their shelves. "What are your names?" the man asked. We introduced ourselves, and he told us his name was Henry, then asked, "Is this the first time you've seen my cabin?" "Yes, sir," we answered. "Nobody else knows about it?" Justin and I looked at each other, then back at Henry, and shrugged. "We ain't ever heard anyone mention it," Justin said. Henry looked at us a moment, then nodded. "Okay. Don't tell anyone." He walked over to a bucket of water he must have brought inside with him and dumped some of it into the pot that sat atop the stove. Then he stepped outside. "We should go," I whispered. "Okay," Justin answered. We hurried to the doorway, and right as we reached it, Henry was there holding a rifle and a log. He looked at us a moment, then we moved out of the way so he could pass. He stepped through and leaned the rifle against the wall and placed the log into the stove. "I'm going to make rabbit stew," he said, and began to make a fire. "You're welcome to join." "We need to get back home," I said. Justin hesitated, though, and asked, "Why you out here?" With the fire going, the man shut the hatch and stood and faced us. "Because I want to be." "Are you alone?" The man nodded. "What about your son?" I asked. The man looked at me, then his eyes fell to his feet, and he said, "He's dead." "Oh, sorry. How'd he die?" Justin asked. The man looked back up. "He was sick." "Where's his mom?" The man shrugged. I don't know. We aren't together anymore. The water was beginning to boil. The man turned to it and began putting in different herbs and spices. Will one of you grab the rabbit from the stump outside? He asked. Justin stepped outside and Henry glanced over at me and said, Go grab some vegetables from the garden out back. Which ones? Whichever ones you like. Justin and I met on my way to the garden, and he said, He doesn't seem so bad. I don't know. What if he's some sort of outlaw? Justin grinned. Maybe he's a bank robber. Or a murderer. Justin held up the skinned rabbit. This one might agree with you. Then he laughed and headed into the cabin. At the garden, I hadn't the faintest idea what I was looking at. Everything looked like weeds, aside from the tomatoes and peppers. So that's what I grabbed. Here you go, I said as I stepped back inside and handed Henry the veggies. No potatoes or carrots? He asked. I didn't see any. They're under the soil. Oh. Henry smirked and took the tomatoes and peppers from me and said, Well, let's see how Cole's stew turns out. That evening, we sat around the cabin and ate the spiciest rabbit stew I'd ever had. For a second there, I'd even thought we'd been poisoned. But Henry just laughed and said I'd picked something called a habanero pepper. What kind of psycho eats this stuff? Justin said as he gulped down a second cup of water. Sorry, boys, Henry laughed. I should have warned you. He stood and grabbed another jar and said, Try this. It might help cool you off. What is it? I asked. Honey. I was desperate, so I quickly took the jar and stuck a spoonful in my mouth, and sure enough, it seemed to help. Justin snagged it from me and did the same, and before long, we'd cleaned out that entire jar of honey. Look at y'all, a couple of Pooh Bears, Henry joked. Sorry, I apologized. I'll get you more. I appreciate that, Cole. Henry stood and took our dishes from us. It's getting dark. You boys better head home. We agreed and thanked him for the honey, and I apologized for ruining the rabbit stew. Henry shrugged and said, I liked it. Might make more for myself sometime. That next morning, I was up in my room when I heard a commotion coming from across the street. Justin and his dad were shouting at each other, and shortly thereafter, Justin came storming outside. I quickly opened my window and hollered for him, and he looked up at me and said, Let's get the hell out of here, Cole. I put on my shoes and hurried down the stairs and past my mom and sister, who were sitting on the couch watching the morning show. Where you off to? Mom asked. Gonna go hang out with Justin. Be home before dark this time. I will. I mean it. Justin was waiting for me outside. We bumped fists, and he said, Let's go see what Henry's doing. Right now. You got anything better to do? I shrugged. No, I guess not. Hold on a second. I hurried back inside and into the kitchen and grabbed one of those bottles of honey that's shaped like a bear, then ran out the door again as my mom said, Hey, were you taking my honey? I looked at Justin and yelled, Run. And we took off for the woods. As we walked through the woods, Justin went on about what an asshole his dad was and how life would be better if it were just him and his mom. I wasn't so sure if it would be better or just another kind of awful, considering his mom was a useless alcoholic. But at least she didn't hit him. She wasn't always a drunk, you know? Justin said, That's why I wear this necklace. It was a shark tooth necklace I'd never seen Justin without for as long as I knew him. Nothing impressive. You can find one in any beach gift shop. They weren't together for a while. My mom and dad, Justin continued. They'd broken up. Before you knew me. Mom and I were happy back then. We went to the beach one day, and she bought me this. We couldn't afford much, you know? But we didn't need much. Or at least I didn't think so. Why'd they get back together? Mom thought we needed more, and Dad could afford it. He's the only reason we're in that house. I guess that ain't all bad. We wouldn't be friends if you weren't in that house. Justin smiled and patted me on the back. You're right, Cole. But never knowing someone is okay. Losing someone you knew is what's hard. Henry was sitting in the doorway reading a book when we arrived. Back so soon? Brought you some honey, I said. Henry held out his hand, and I tossed it to him. He looked at it and smiled. Thank you, Cole. What are you reading? Justin asked. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Ever heard of it? Justin shook his head. I'm not much of a reader. Henry looked at me and I shook my head as well. What's it about? I asked. It's about two friends, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. They get into a bunch of trouble and go on adventures and such. It's sort of a kid's book. Henry closed the book. I started reading it again because you two remind me of the main characters. Cole, you're like Tom, and Justin here is like Huckleberry. What kind of name is Huckleberry? Justin asked. Henry shrugged. Same could be said about Justin, or Cole, or even Henry. What kind of name is any name, really? We hadn't a clue, and noticing he confused us, Henry laughed and said, So, what can I do for you boys today? I guess we're just looking for something to do. Henry put the book down and scratched at his chin. Y'all know how to chop logs? On that day, Henry taught us how to chop logs and start a fire, and over the next couple of years we'd sneak off a few days each week and bring Henry food and supplies in exchange for lessons in self-sufficiency. He taught us things like how to work with wood, garden, hunt, skin an animal, and cook. We'd also check out books for him from the library, and when he finished one we'd spend the following night sitting fireside as he told us all about what he'd read. Henry became like a father to Justin and me, and that made me and Justin feel more like brothers. Justin was 16 when he told me his plan. I want to introduce Henry to my mom. What? Why? I asked. Maybe they'll hit it off. But your parents are still married. I know. I'm hoping if Mom meets Henry, she'll fall in love with him and leave my dad. You don't even know if Henry is her type. How can he not be? He's single and nice and way better than my dad. That don't mean she'll fall in love with him. It don't work that way, Justin. You even said that the only reason your mom got back together with your dad is because he had money. Henry doesn't have any money. Justin thumbed at the shark tooth necklace. Henry can show her that we don't need money to be happy. He can help her remember. Part of me didn't want it to happen because I wanted Henry to be my dad. I would have been jealous. But I also knew that Henry wasn't just living in the woods. He was hiding. For whatever reason, he didn't want to be found. That night there was an argument across the street. It was violent and it was loud. Glass was shattered and doors were slammed, and in the morning, Justin was gone. I'd gotten used to hearing from Justin every day. If I didn't see him, he'd call me over the walkie-talkie. This was the 90s. We weren't using cell phones. So I went to his house that following afternoon and knocked on the door. Something I was always hesitant to do. His dad answered and just looked at me. Is Justin home? I asked. No. I haven't seen him all day. His dad shrugged. Not my problem. But he's your son. Excuse me. I swallowed and said, Sorry, I meant that you'd know better than anyone else. Well, I don't. Before he shut the door, I noticed that the rug that was usually spread across the living room floor was gone, and there was a new hole in the wall about the size of a fist. That had me concerned, but I decided I'd check with Henry before telling my mom what I saw. So, I made the long walk through the woods alone to Henry's house. White smoke was billowing from the chimney as I arrived and knocked on the door. Henry opened it and said, Hey, Cole, come on in. I stepped inside and could smell that he was cooking a stew. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you're probably not going to want any of this stew, he said. How come? He lifted the pot off the stove and showed me. It's your spicy rabbit concoction. I smirked. No thanks. Well, if you change your mind, I have plenty of honey. Henry went back to stirring. Where's Justin? I was hoping he was here. Henry stopped stirring and looked at me. You can't find him? No. I haven't seen him all day. That's not like him. No, it ain't. But I heard his dad hollering last night, and when I went to his house a couple hours ago, there was a big hole in the wall and the living room rug was missing. And his dad said he ain't seen him all day. Henry sighed and sat on the bed. Have you told your mom? Not yet. I wanted to see if he was here first. Can you think of anywhere else he might be? I shrugged. No. He was planning on coming out here anyway. Without you. I don't know. Maybe. He wanted to try to get you to meet his mom. Henry furrowed his brow. Why? He thought if she met you, she might fall in love and leave his dad. Henry smirked and shook his head. Oh, Justin. That poor boy. I watched Henry for a moment, then asked, would you have married his mom? No, Cole. I don't know her, and even if I did, my marrying days are over. This is how I'm going to live until I die. Alone. Henry nodded. What do I do now? Henry stood up and took the pot off the stove, set it onto a cinder block, and tasted the stew. If you tell the police and Justin becomes a missing person, there will be search parties looking all up and down these woods. They'll find me. So, finding Justin is more important. I'm a wanted man, Cole. It was the first time I'd heard him admit it. He truly was an outlaw. What did you do? I asked. Henry put the spoon down and walked over to the bookshelf, pulled out his journal and removed the picture of the young boy and looked at it. His name was Sean, your son. I lied when I told you he was sick. He wasn't sick. He was murdered. A man took him when he was walking home from school. He took my son, locked him in a cellar, and tortured him until he died. Sean was only 10 years old. I'm sorry, Henry. I knew who did it, but the police thought differently. They said there wasn't enough evidence. But I knew without a shadow of a doubt it was him. So, I did what the police couldn't. I killed him. Henry turned and looked at me. And, for that reason, I can't let them find me. I was shocked that Henry was even capable of such a thing. Okay. Then what do I do? Henry placed the photograph on the bookshelf and sat back on the bed. You need to either find Justin or find proof that his dad killed him. But you need to move quick, before someone files a missing person report. Justin's dad owned a contracting business. Some days he worked long hours, some days he barely worked at all. It was impossible to gauge when he would and wouldn't be home. So, the following morning I watched by my window until he left, and the second he did, I hurried across the street. The door was locked, as I figured it would be, but I knew the same couldn't be said about Justin's bedroom window. There had been plenty of times when Justin snuck out that window in the middle of the night and, likewise, I'd also snuck in a handful of times. The latch was broken. It was easy. I entered as quiet and careful as I could, and looked around Justin's room for any clues. It was messier than I remembered, and the door had been knocked off its hinges. But what stood out most to me was that his mattress was missing. Nothing else seemed out of place. I stepped into the hall and crept carefully toward the living room, keeping an eye out for Justin's mom as I went. The first thing I noticed was that the walls had more than one hole punched into them, and the furniture was all scattered about. It looked like Justin's dad had gotten into a fist fight with the room itself. Again, I noticed the missing rug, and knelt and smelled something like bleach, and as I looked even closer, saw what looked like 3 drops of blood. All the clues were pointing to the worst. I crept over to the kitchen and opened the fridge. Lots of beer. I closed it and looked at the counters. There was a knife missing from the wooden knife block. I was almost certain now, but I had to check 2 more spots, the garage and the master bedroom. The garage had a freezer, and my heart trembled at the thought of what I might find in it. First, I looked around behind tool chests and whatnot, and finding nothing, I walked over to the freezer. Please don't be in here, I whispered to myself, then lifted the lid. There wasn't anything inside but deer meat and ice cream. I sighed with relief. Then, all of a sudden, the garage door began to open. Without a second thought, I hurried back into the house and didn't get far before I was face to face with Justin's mom. She blinked at me a few times, then groggily said, "Hey, Cole, where's Justin?" At that moment, the interior garage door opened and Justin's dad stepped inside. "What the hell are you doing here?" he said. "I'm looking for Justin. He's not here." I told you that already. Where is he? I don't know. Yes, you do. His dad's eyes got big, and he said, "What are you trying to say? You killed him." I know you did. Boy, you better watch your mouth. What's he talking about, Chris? Justin's mom asked. Shut the fuck up, woman. I backed up toward Justin's mom and said, he killed Justin. And if you don't leave here, he's going to kill you, too. Chris pointed his finger at me and stepped closer. I'll kill you, boy. That's who I'll kill if you don't get out of my house right now. Chris charged at me and Justin's mom pushed me out of the way and screamed, Get out of here, Cole. Then she pulled at Chris long enough for me to run out the front door, and whether that was enough, I don't know, because I just kept running without looking back until I reached the woods, and even then, I still hurried until I got to Henry's cabin. I didn't bother to knock on the door this time, and when I got inside, Henry wasn't there. It was quiet and everything was tidy. I sat on the bed and caught my breath, and noticed that the rifle was gone. He must have been out hunting. I sat there a moment, waiting for him, and noticed the photograph of his son still sitting on the bookshelf from the previous night. It seemed dear to him, not something he liked to share. But I was curious, so I picked it up and got my first real look at the boy. He looked to be about 10, the age Henry said he was when he died. He didn't look much like Henry. He was blonde-haired and blue-eyed, whereas Henry had dark features. There was something about his smile that seemed forced. His eyes didn't look happy. In fact, he looked kind of scared. But there was something else. Something in the background that was out of place. It was Henry's cabin. That didn't make sense. Henry moved to the woods to escape the law, a law he didn't break until after his son died. How could his son have been here? I dropped the picture and pulled Henry's journal from the shelf and opened it. It wasn't a journal at all. It was a photo album. Each page a photo of a different child. I felt the room start to spin. I had to leave before he came back. I turned around to go out the door and stopped. There he was, standing right in front of me. Hi, Cole, he said. He looked at the book in my hand. I see you looked at my journal. I didn't look at it. No? Oh, well, then let me show you. That's okay. I've got to go. Nonsense. Henry shut the door. Stay a little while. Then he tapped the bed with the butt of his rifle and said, Have a seat. Reluctantly, I set the book down and did as he asked. He stepped over to the bookshelf and picked up his journal, then sat next to me on the bed. He carefully opened it to the first page. This is my collection, Cole. They're in ascending order by age. Page 1, you can see, is an infant. Little baby Andy. Page 2 is 1-year-old Tessa. He flipped the page. 2-year-old Abigail, or Abby, as her parents like to call her. Please, I don't want to see any more. Henry sighed and flipped a few pages to age 9, and next to it was a blank space. He placed the photo of the blonde-haired boy under age 10. Michael had gotten lost in the woods. He found me, just like you and Justin. Where is he? Justin? Oh, let me show you. Henry flipped past ages 11 through 15 and stopped on 16. It was a picture of Justin bound to a chair in a dark room. He was a fighter, I have to admit. I felt sick. Tears started to swell in my eyes. Justin had been betrayed by the man he trusted most, and at that moment I had not only lost my best friend, my brother, but I'd also lost another father. Now, Cole, don't cry. I'll let you see him. You can say goodbye. He's alive. Henry pointed at the floor. He's down there. Show me. Henry closed the book and stood, then lifted the deerskin rug, revealing a hatch door. He opened it, and a rotten odor lifted into the cabin. He motioned with his hand to the dark hole in the floor and said, After you. I stood and looked down into the hole. I don't see anything. Henry reached under his bed and grabbed a flashlight and handed it to me. I shined it down the hole and could see a ladder descending about 20 feet to a dirt floor. You go first, I said. Henry frowned. Cole, whether you go down or not, I'm the one controlling this situation. I choose whether you live or die." I stared at him a moment, knowing what he said was true, and leaned over the hole and yelled, "Justin." No answer. Why isn't he answering? Henry shrugged. Maybe he can't hear you. I couldn't take not knowing anymore, so I stepped to the ladder and descended. To my surprise, Henry followed. "Justin, you in here?" My feet touched the dirt floor, and I looked around the room with the flashlight. It was empty of all except a chair in the middle, and slumped over in the chair was Justin. I hurried over to him and lifted his head, and when I did, it fell back, and I could see that his throat had been cut, and the ground beneath him was sodden with blood. "Sorry, Cole. I needed 16. He trusted you. And were those 2 years not some of his best?" I looked at Justin's lifeless body, the shark tooth necklace, his symbol of hope, still hanging from his neck. "Are you going to kill me next?" "Well, I already have a 14. Henry opened the journal and took out the picture and looked at it for a moment. Then he tore it in half and said, "But it looks like I need a new one." He dropped the journal and rushed toward me, and right before he reached me, I yanked the necklace from Justin's neck and stabbed the shark tooth straight into Henry's eye. "Fuck," he cried, covering his face, blood seeping between his fingers. I sprinted past him and up the ladder, and before I got to the top, he grabbed a hold of my ankle. I kicked several times and managed to connect with his bloodied face, knocking him to the ground. Then I heaved myself up from the hole, slammed the hatch shut, and piled everything I could on top of it. I watched for a moment as he tried and failed to push through. Then I grabbed his rifle and took off for my house. The cabin was so far back in the woods that the police asked me to take them to it. My mom went with me, and around noon, we reached it. We stayed back as the police moved forward with guns drawn. But as they entered the cabin, I could see that the hatch was now open. They never found Henry. He left behind everything except his journal. I recently went back to the old neighborhood. Most of the houses have been sitting empty for over 20 years. I suppose people weren't comfortable with the idea that Henry might still be in those woods. And now that everyone is gone, nature has moved into all of their homes. All except for one. Justin's dad stayed, but not his mom. On the day of Justin's funeral, I gave her a gift. A necklace. One which reminded her of a happier time. In the woods is a spot where the cabin once stood. In its place, a cross memorializing where so many children lost their lives. Nobody knows for sure how many children died there. At least 6, as that's how many bodies were found buried in various spots around the cabin. Around the cross are several mementos placed there by loved ones, a toy car, a girl's hair ribbon, a teddy bear. But on the day I visited, I found something that sent a chill down my spine. A copy of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Inside was a handwritten message, which read, "See you soon, 38. Tomorrow will be my 38th birthday." Fourth story. Wendigo encounter. This is a repost. I had to fix some spacing errors. I am not sure if this is the right place to post this, but I am scared shitless. After hearing stories and looking stuff up online, I'm fairly sure it was a Wendigo. Me, my son, and girlfriend were attacked by something. We were camping up in the northernmost area of Washington. My girlfriend is incredibly superstitious, so she insisted we brought weapons. So I had my combat knife and a 12-gauge shotgun, and she brought a .22 rifle alongside a newly sharpened machete. Our son was just 3 years old at the time. She and I were set on edge from a park ranger, who seemed very tense and uneasy, who stopped us and instead of confiscating our weapons told us to be careful and stay safe, then sent us along our way to the camp. When we got there, we were informed that several visitors had spoken about some unnatural noises and a pale creature that would mimic voices and sounds of people who weren't talking or seeming to be distracted. I laughed and put the idea out my mind, thinking to myself there's no way. They're fucking with us. But I knew better. So we then reached the area we were going to set up camp. We immediately got a fire ready to light and set up our tent and bags. I fed my son as my girlfriend ate a snack. We decided to get a lay of the area, so me and my girlfriend hiked around for about an hour or so. I had one of those baby-carrying backpacks, and my son started to get real heavy. Everything seemed normal until I saw something down the almost path we were on. We walked closer to investigate and saw drag marks. It looked as if someone had killed a buck. There was a hole outlined in the dirt with a small dried pool of blood, as if someone grabbed it from the antlers and pulled. That wouldn't be possible for any man to do. The buck, or whatever it was, would have been way too big for that. Shaken, we rushed back to base camp and restarted the fire and hurried back into our tent. Too afraid to leave since it was dusk by now, we stayed inside the tent, and my girlfriend put our son to bed. Eventually, probably from the exhaustion of fright, we fell asleep. What must have been hours later, I awoke to a faint rasping sound that sounded like a child crying. I gazed outside in confusion and saw the outline of a creature that seemed to be a buck, standing over something. It seemed to be about 20 feet away, but at a closer glance had unnaturally long limbs for a buck, and was eerily tall. In sudden fear, I unloaded 2 shots into the creature and heard a loud blood-curdling C or Y.M. My girlfriend awoke screaming to the shots I had fired as I tried to explain what I had heard. To my surprise, the animal hadn't moved an inch. Then I noticed the stains on the side of the animal. It looked like blood was running down the edge, and lots of it. It stared at me deep into my eyes as I became petrified with fear. A sinister feeling of dread fell over me as if it knew I couldn't move. I thought to myself, what if it starts to bolt towards us? Just then, this tall, decrepit demonic thing seemed to whisper something. I couldn't exactly tell what it was saying, but it seemed to have said, "I need more children." My girlfriend screamed, asking where our son was. We blacked out. In the morning, we awoke to park rangers at our campsite. We didn't see our son anywhere. We told the rangers that he was missing, and they started a search party. I explained what had happened, and strangely, they seemed to believe it. The one who seemed to be older by at least a decade pulled along the one we met earlier and whispered in his ear. I only heard a single line, and I'm not even sure if what I heard was correct. It sounded like he said, "It's getting bolder." They didn't seem to want us by ourselves, so they waited with us while they continued the search. We stayed in a log cabin for 3 days with a forest ranger, when suddenly some rangers came into the cabin saying they couldn't find our son. My girlfriend starts to sob. I start to hate myself, thinking that I could have done something if I wasn't frozen in fear. We rushed outside only to find some injured and frightened police officials. The rangers wouldn't tell us anything of what happened or what they saw, or why the cops were scared shitless. All we know is that we don't have a son anymore. God help whoever goes into that forest next, and please, please don't bring your kids with you. 5th story. The bitter winds howled through the dense pine forests of upstate New York, carrying with them an ancient and malevolent force. The small town of Ravens Hollow, nestled on the edge of Lake Ontario, had long been a haven for those seeking solitude and escape from the chaos of city life. Little did they know, a darkness had awakened in the heart of the Great Woods, a terror that would consume the town in a relentless nightmare. Chapter 1. The Haunting Silence. The first signs of unease manifested in the form of an eerie silence that draped Ravens Hollow like a funeral shroud. Birds ceased their melodic chatter, and the rustling leaves fell still as the nocturnal creatures retreated into the shadows. Whispers of strange sightings echoed among the townsfolk, glimpses of elongated shadows and haunting cries in the deep of night. Amelia, a local historian with a penchant for the supernatural, delved into the town's archives seeking clues about the origin of this ominous presence. She uncovered ancient tales of a Wendigo, a malevolent spirit that thrived on the suffering of those who dared to trespass into its realm. Chapter 2. Frozen Fingers of Fear. As winter tightened its grip on Ravens Hollow, the chilling whispers grew louder, and the temperature plummeted to unnatural lows. Residents reported seeing ghastly figures dancing at the edge of the woods, their eyes glowing like the frigid moon above. The once friendly townsfolk turned paranoid, casting accusing glances at each other. unsure of who among them might be possessed by the Wendigo's curse. Amelia, driven by an insatiable curiosity, ventured into the heart of the woods, guided by the cryptic tales of an old native elder. She felt the crunch of frost underfoot and the weight of unseen eyes watching her every move. The trees seemed to close in, their skeletal branches forming grotesque figures that pointed the way to an ancient burial ground. Chapter 3. The Dance of the Wendigo. Within the sacred burial ground, the air thickened with an otherworldly energy. An ancient totem stood at the center, adorned with bones of long-forgotten creatures. As Amelia approached, the temperature plummeted even further, and her breath formed ghostly clouds in the frigid air. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and a monstrous creature emerged from the shadows, a grotesque fusion of human and beast, with antlers that scraped against the frozen branches. The Wendigo's eyes glowed with an insatiable hunger, and it let out a bone-chilling howl that reverberated through the woods. Amelia, paralyzed with terror, could only watch as the Wendigo began its haunting dance, a ritualistic performance that summoned the spirits of the damned. Shadows twisted and contorted, merging with the Wendigo in a macabre display of malevolence. Chapter 4. Descent into Madness. The once tranquil town of Raven's Hollow descended into chaos as the Wendigo's influence spread like a ravenous plague. Nightmares seeped into reality, and the townsfolk succumbed to madness, their minds shattered by the relentless whispers that echoed through the frozen air. Amelia, bearing witness to the town's unraveling, knew she had to find a way to break the Wendigo's curse. Armed with ancient knowledge and guided by the spirits of the past, she embarked on a perilous journey to confront the malevolent force that had ensnared Raven's Hollow. Chapter 5. The Battle in the Shadows. The final confrontation unfolded in the heart of the ancient burial ground. The air crackled with supernatural energy as Amelia faced the Wendigo, armed with a sacred talisman and the collective will of the tormented spirits. The forest itself seemed to recoil in anticipation. The battle between human and supernatural beast raged on, each step Amelia took sending tremors through the frozen ground. The Wendigo's howls echoed through the night, blending with the anguished cries of the spirits it had ensnared. With a surge of determination, Amelia raised the talisman high, channeling the power of the ancient spirits. The Wendigo writhed in agony as its malevolent essence was torn asunder. The burial ground echoed with a triumphant howl, and the shadows retreated, leaving behind a town forever scarred by the horrors of the Wendigo's haunting. Epilogue. The Lingering Shadows. Though the Wendigo was banished, Raven's Hollow remained forever changed. The townsfolk, scarred by the ordeal, carried the weight of the supernatural encounter. The ancient burial ground, now reclaimed by the spirits, stood as a solemn reminder of the thin veil that separated the living from the supernatural. As winter gave way to spring, the whispers of the Wendigo faded into a haunting memory. The Great Lakes region resumed its natural rhythm, but those who survived the terror of Raven's Hollow knew that the shadows of the Wendigo would forever linger in the frozen depths of the pine-scented woods. Sixth story. This story was shared by you/SilverInkBlot V2. Wendigo. Norma Jean drew a heart on the back of my hand in hoop snake blood. When that fades, she said, tapping the center of her work, you may forget about me. Norma Jean and I dated on and off through high school and then some. We grew up wandering the forest and exploring the caverns surrounding Ripple Creek, running from the hide-behinds and hodags when we stumbled too far into their territory. The backwoods of Minnesota were our playground, from the shores of Loon Lake to the edge of Crazy Dan's property, where the pine trees grew so tall you couldn't see the sky. The day Norma Jean disappeared, I saw a teakettle scuttling around the shed behind my place. It walked backwards, like they do, and bumped right into the pile of what I spent all day chopping. Teakettlers don't ever stray so far from the woods. They're very shy. I had planned to see about trapping it the next day, show Norma Jean. Course, that didn't happen after all. I heard about Norma Jean the next morning, on my way to the general store for a new axe. The axe handle hounds got mine. Bunch of people everywhere, conversing in little groups, tittering like birds. They all stopped talking when they saw me, shuffled away when I drew near. I didn't say anything. Something in their gaze made my voice feel as though it had rusted away. Finn was the one who pulled me aside. Said people hadn't seen hide nor hair of Norma Jean in 2 days. Bertie got worried after her car sat out on the road so long and called the cops. They went up to the Janies, and that's when they found the blood on the floor. Crazy Dan was already mumbling about hide-behinds to anyone who would listen. Not me. Norma Jean and I have been getting away from hide-behinds for years. Everyone's talking, but no one's actually saying anything. Lot of whispering about the Wendigo among the superstitious. More ordinary whispers from the less superstitious. One of the elders is a full-blooded Cree. I overheard a couple OL biddies asking for talismans. Lots of narrowed eyes my way. I don't know what to say. The cops already interviewed me. I dated Norma Jean, but so did Aaron, Spruce, Hunter, Alder, Flint. Norma Jean was a pretty gal, milk-white skin, sky blue eyes, corkscrew blonde hair. Any guy'd be lucky to have her on his arm. No one in Ripple Creek has slept easy lately, not with this hanging over our heads. I've had to buy 2 more axes in the last 4 weeks. I keep leaving them outside. The axe handle hounds must love me. I hear them barking the nights I forget to put my axe away, excited to have a free meal. Norma Jean would have laughed at me if she were still here. The thought brings the metallic taste of sorrow to my tongue. I remembered it in a dream, when Norma Jean and I went to Loon Lake Cemetery. There's no road out there anymore. You have to hike through the woods and over swampland that's just as likely to suck you down as it is to let you pass. Norma Jean always had a thing for the supernatural. They say there are 3 witches buried in that graveyard. If you step over one of their graves, they will come for you. 2 of the headstones are near the grove. The 3rd is missing. You really think there's a witch buried here? The weathered tombstones are nearly unreadable in the weak beam of my flashlight. Maybe Norma Jean rests on her haunches, tracing a finger over a name more than a century gone. Her blonde corkscrew hair is silver under the moon. She turns to me with a crooked smile. Are you afraid? The place did give me the shivers, even in my dream. But I wasn't afraid. No. She smiles a little wider. There are too many teeth in her mouth. Are you sure? I woke up with a pounding heart and a lump in my throat. My mouth tasted like blood, and I can't seem to scrub the feeling away. Mostly I just try to forget the whole thing. Forget I ever dated Norma Jean. It's all right most of the time. I chop and sell wood, and another winter passes. Then I see the hoop snake blood hard on the back of my hand, and it all rushes back. The blonde corkscrews. Norma Jean and me. The hide-behinds and Hodeks. Norma Jean and Flint. The late nights and long hikes. Norma Jean and Alder. The axe handle hounds, swallowing my axe whole. 7th story. This story was shared by you/Dokum. Even though I solo hiked the Pacific Crest Trail back in 2019, I wasn't always alone. In April of 2019, I decided to solo hike the Pacific Crest Trail. It had been a dream of mine ever since watching the movie, Wild. Anyway, after much planning, I finally began my journey on April 30th in Campo, California. Now, I estimated that it would take me about 6 months or so to complete the trail, with my final destination being Canada. On the first day of my hike, I managed to walk 25 miles despite the desert heat, which was an accomplishment for me. The further I hiked the PCT, though, is when I noticed just how beautiful yet dangerous the desert could be. I nearly stepped on some rattlesnakes on the trail. Anyway, it was my 53rd day on the trail when I finally reached the famous Kennedy Meadows. I decided to rest up there for a few days, 0 days, before heading back onto the trail again. Several days later, I felt invigorated and was back on the trail. It was about a week after leaving Kennedy Meadows when inexplicable things began to happen to me. It was around Yosemite National Park when I noticed I was being followed. Now, there are other hikers and even wildlife on the trail, but this felt different, and so, as a female hiker, I had to be cautious. I found myself walking even faster, and according to my GPS, there was a campsite nearby. It was about 20 minutes later when I finally reached the campsite. I breathed a sigh of relief when I noticed there were several other hikers there too. Feeling exhausted, I decided to camp there for the night. After setting up my tent, I had something to eat before going to sleep. Around 11 p.m., I was awoken by someone or something calling my name. At first, I thought it was a dream that was until I heard it again. Needless to say, I didn't get much sleep that night. Anyway, the next few days on the trail were without incident. That all changed though on my 56th day on the trail, when I somehow managed to twist my ankle, which forced me off the trail for a few days. Since I was 20 miles or so from the nearest town, I decided to find a campsite and rest up until my ankle felt a little better. After I found my campsite, I pitched my tent and laid down for a bit. When I finally woke up, it was already dark outside. What made it even scarier was the fact that I was alone at this campsite. Although I was feeling apprehensive, I had no choice but to stay. At this point, I had forgotten about the voice I had heard several days ago, but that was about to change. Anyway, I was hungry, but after my meal of beans and rice, I began to feel drowsy again and decided to lie down. As I was about to fall into a deep sleep, I heard someone shout, "Please help me. Kim, please help me. Kim, please help me, Kim," in rapid succession. The voice was the same one from 3 days earlier, which unnerved me even more because I was certain now this person or thing was stalking me. Despite knowing this, though, I still wanted to see who or what it was terrorizing me. I slowly unzipped my tent, and as I was opening the flap, I heard a scream. My heart began to pound. Using my flashlight, I scanned the nearby woods and saw a figure standing off in the distance. I couldn't make out any features, but it was humanoid in shape. "Who are you?" I shouted. "Who are you?" It replied. "What do you want? What do you want?" Now, it was clearly mocking me, and at this point, I was really scared. With nowhere to go, though, I decided to stay in the safety of my tent until morning. While I was sitting there, I could hear it circling my tent, which lasted for an hour or so. Right at the crack of dawn, I quickly packed up my gear, even though my ankle was still hurting. As I was packing up, I noticed several sets of footprints surrounding my tent, except these weren't human, confirming my worst fears. Anyway, I somehow managed to make it to the nearest town, where I stayed for about a week in order for my ankle to heal. Despite my frightening experience, though, I eventually got back onto the PCT and finally made it to Canada without another incident, although I was still being followed. As soon as I got back home, I did some research, and the results I got were about skinwalkers and the Wendigo. Now, I'm not saying what I experienced on the PCT was supernatural. I'm a skeptic, but who knows what's real and what's not. Anyway, to those of you who are thinking about hiking the PCT, my story isn't intended to discourage you from hiking it, but rather it's a cautionary tale about the potential dangers on the trail. Stay safe, everyone, and happy hiking. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comments section, and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm.